Is it a bird? A plane? Nope, we are talking all things superhero culture. Get ready to blast off into the world of entertainment with Pop Culture Planet. Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of Pop Culture Planet. I'm your host, Kristen Maldonado, and this is your weekly destination for all things in-depth pop culture discussion. Each week, we'll be talking with some incredible experts, breaking down TV and movie news, and so much more. In this episode, I'm really excited to have not one, not two, but three guests, Elliott of Movie Files, KB, and Yael Tygiel. All right, guys, welcome. How are you today?
Great.
Doing well, doing great.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. I'm so glad you guys are here. And now one of the things we do on my podcast is we jump right into your entertainment origins, kind of like the superhero origins we're going to get into in a little bit. So KB, do you want to start first and tell us a little bit about how you got started and where your love of pop culture came from?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'd say that my love of pop culture started from a pretty early age. I mean, I was like a huge fan of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles growing up and the Power Rangers. And so that kind of set it off for me. And in terms of my kind of pop culture freelance journalism space, I've been doing this for 5 years now, about 5 years writing. Actually started off podcasting, did not want to write because I guess my undergraduate and my graduate degrees kind of scarred me in terms of how much writing I had been doing to obtain them. And so even though I actually used to be I used to write a ton of short stories when I was younger. So I guess I got to college and was like, I'm tired of this. So I started podcasting, which I loved. And then there was actually just a need for more writers. So I ended up getting into writing and then doing video. And so, yeah, now we're here.
Awesome. That is so cool. So you went from podcasting back to writing.
Yes. Ironically, they were like, we need more writers. And I was like, cool, I guess. And then, that was kind of it. So 5 years still writing. So yeah.
Awesome. What about you, Yael?
I grew up with a TV. I love it. It was my best friend. I was obsessed with X-Men, the animated series. And I'm pretty sure that is what made me think I wanted to be an actor, because I knew I couldn't be a mutant, but I could play one. So I grew up thinking I wanted to be an actor, realized I'm not a good actor, but started hosting and interviewing actors, which apparently I am good at. So that's how I found my way to hosting and journalism. I've been doing it for over 10 years now. And I freaking love it. I get to go to cons and meet people and talk to creators and see the people who have the skill that I didn't and get to talk to them about it, which is the best.
That's awesome. Do you have a favorite, person that you've talked to?
Oh, that's such a hard question. No, I don't. That's so hard.
No, it totally is. I'm sure you end up meeting so many people. It's like, oh shoot, I don't even remember now who I talked to.
Yeah, there's some from the early days that I've forgotten. I interviewed Glenn Close once. That's incredible.
Nice. Yeah.
And I completely forgot.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you remember now.
I don't know, Yael. My number one, I will always remember. So I can't. Oh, my number one's Oprah. So.
I haven't interviewed Oprah.
So I will never.
That's pretty big. Pretty big.
What was that like?
Amazing. She's like your aunt. She's like an auntie. Truly. She's like, let's take photos, give you a hug. She's just so kind and warm and sweet. She makes you feel like you're as important as she is, which is wild. So yeah.
Oh my gosh! Wow, that's crazy. It's amazing. You gotta put that on your grave. Oprah.
Yeah.
What about you, Elliott?
And nowhere near as accomplished as these wonderful women on the panel. I inspired to be in their position one day, but no, my love for pop culture started very young, like everyone else, with TV, comics, watching comic book movies. Jurassic Park, I watched that so many times when I was young. I grew up in the 90s. I'm a product of the 90s. So all that stuff, my horror fans out there, slasher films, all that stuff is where I kind of grew up in the pop culture zeitgeist. And as far as the YouTube space and Instagram and all that fun stuff, I had a YouTube channel when I was in college. So I went to film for film and video, and was just doing like sporadic reviews about my thoughts on this and that, some video game. It was like literally random. Like that channel is nowhere to be found anymore. So took like a 5-7 year break, going to school, doing work, all that stuff. Couldn't keep up with the YouTube space. But 3 years ago, and it's actually going to be 3 years, September 4th, I started my YouTube channel, Movie Files. And literally it's just a case of just covering as much movies and TV shows as I possibly can, whether it be horror films, comedy. I love TV, just like you, Kristen, and try to keep up with all that stuff because I find it so fascinating that I can interact with people that are in China, in Europe, in New York City, and just talk to them about our favorite shows, our favorite movies, and having, diverse people on the channel and just having those interesting conversations where we all come from different backgrounds, but we can all relate to certain things that we love, like X-Men, like the comic book stuff we're talking about later. So it's just a matter of the interactions have been fantastic in this community, whether it be the YouTube space and things of that nature, has been just open armed, and I just love being a part of it. And like I said, inspired to be maybe interviewing the Oprah, interviewing a Glenn Close one of these days. But it's a fun space to be in.
Awesome. I totally relate to that. I mean, I think that's why we, all love what we do, is that you get to connect with other people that like the things you do. Look at us all here together today, going to talk about something that we all love, superhero culture and pop culture. So, that's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. So speaking of, let's start getting into some of the fun news topics that we have for today. DC Fandome. Just happened. We got so much news about all the upcoming DC projects. Did you guys have a favorite that you're just like, we need to start with that because I was so excited?
I think it's probably the Batman, right? I think we could all say the Batman broke the internet. You would have thought Beyonce was Batman. Like, it broke the internet. So like I thought the panel by Matt Reeves, it's always fascinating to listen to directors and the creators behind the projects having so much passion for the character and really understanding the world. I'm a big Batman fan, wearing my Joker shirt here. So I thought that was great. And that trailer, seriously, that trailer was awesome.
It was. Let's play a little bit of it here while we talk over. But what I really liked about this trailer was that it kind of seemed a little bit unhinged. Like when we're seeing those punches, I'm like, oh my gosh, like he's not going to stop. We need someone to hold him back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm laughing because I know how Yael feels about this trailer, but I will say that for me, I did enjoy the Batman trailer. I will say I kind of went in thinking I don't want another Batman movie, like in general, just because I feel like we've had so many of these Batman origin stories. But I think you're right, Elliott. Like, watching Matt Reeves discuss his vision for the film and kind of where the characters are, where we're going to meet them, that got me super hyped. And then, of course, like, I just saw the trailer, and, I'll also be honest and say I was not hugely on board with Robert Pattinson, not because I don't think he's a good actor, but also sometimes I do kind of wish they would take a look at new and up and coming actors who are just not as familiar and kind of give them a shot to play one of these big roles. And so I kind of was like, who knows? But the trailer definitely sold me. But I can't say that it's the top thing I'm most excited about, because I will say I'm most excited about Wonder Woman 1984. And that's probably just the realist in me, because it's finished. So I'm like, we will actually get it soon. Meanwhile, Batman has only been filming, I think Matt Reeves said, 25 to 30% of it is done. Yeah. So I'm like, oh man, we're really not getting Batman for a long time. But Wonder Woman, we already have together. And I'm like, yay. And the first one was so great. And Chris Pine's my favorite Chris. So
I agree about Wonder Woman. I'm so excited for that. And yes, I was not excited about this trailer. But I will say for having 25% done, being able to make a trailer is incredible. Based on the trailer, there are too many villains.
There's a lot.
Too many villains. And I did not get to see the panel, but I will say I love when the person in charge is excited and tells you why they're excited. And I think that's what will really sell. So maybe I should have seen the panel, and then I would have been more excited. But based on solely the trailer, It's another Batman movie.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk more about this later, but it is kind of like, yes, we love these projects, and when you're reading the comics, yeah, it's fun to get different stories, but when you're watching a movie, how many adaptations can we do of the same characters? You know, it kind of gets a little bit like, all right, I've seen this like 100 times already.
Yeah, it's a lot of origin stories. And I mean, look at Spider-Man did it right. We know how he became Spider-Man. We can move on.
Yeah.
Like, let's just jump into the stories. But I do feel like something that perturbs me, I guess, about the DCEU is that because DC TV is doing it so well, like they have flow, they have continuity, because you know, they utilize their characters well. I'm always like, guys, just please take a page out of the DC TV book for the cinematic universe, and let's like try to make this a cohesive universe for once.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a very interesting point too, because another thing that Matt Reeves did bring up is that they are doing the Jim Gordon Gotham PD television show that will connect into the universe. So I think they're finally, and earlier in the day, they had Jim Lee, Walter Amada talking about that the TV world and the movie world will finally kind of coexist, and HBO Max is going to kind of be that hub where we get that understanding of the characters, a 10-episode character development, learn about the city, and then when we see them on the big screen, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that, you know, Zoe Kravitz, or, you know, whatever the case may be. So I love that the worlds are finally coming together, like you said, Kay. The TV world and the movie world are coexisting under one umbrella.
Ooh, and I missed that panel, but honestly, I'm really hoping then that they integrate Pennyworth, because I think that would be like, Pennyworth is such a unique show, and it's actually really good, and so I wish they would try to figure out a way to incorporate Pennyworth into that. But
all right. I have not checked that one out, so I'll have to look into that one. But one of the other films you guys mentioned was Wonder Woman. So if you guys want to share a little bit about, you know, why this trailer, this project you're so excited for, aside that it's, you know, it's already going to be ready to come out soon.
We had discussed a little bit, KB and I, the idea of Cheetah, and this is our first time really seeing Cheetah in cheetah form, and that I was not prepared for a cat person, but I am a crazy cat lady and so excited for a cat person. Oh man, I did not know that I needed it, and I need it so hard.
That is too funny. I mean, it looks like, I don't know much about this character, but just the way that like it kind of looked like we saw Kristen Wiig's character before she became you know, the cheetah. It sort of reminded me a little bit of like the Riddler or something like that, where it's like I don't know, that person that's like a little bit more shy and reserved, and then they kind of like come out as this big villain. So I do like those stories. I think that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, for me, the cheetah portion of the trailer was my least favorite, just because I was like, what is this CGI, girl? What are we doing? Like, I mean, she was like already just kind of in her like cheetah print attire 24/7, which I already was like, okay, I mean, you know, like, do your thing, girl. It is the 80s. But then all of a sudden, you know, we see Diana in her new gold suit, which is fire, by the way, which I absolutely love. We see Diana, her new gold suit, but then there's Kristen Wiig as an actual cheetah, and I was like, oh, I don't know about this. I'm still excited about the movie, but I just, in terms of like the special effects, I won't know. I also feel like they showed us Kristen Wiig as a cheetah in the dark almost. Like that part of the trailer was really dark. So I think maybe they're still working on some things. So I'm hopefully like when the movie comes out, I'll be like, oh, this CGI is much different than what I expected based on that trailer. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, 100%. So Wonder Woman is my favorite DCEU to date. She's one of my top comic book characters. I love Diana, and I love the first one. And her and Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot, I think a dynamic duo like Leonardo DiCaprio and Martin Scorsese. I just think when they get on screen together, it's just magic. So super excited for it. My only reservations from that trailer is I hope, and Patty Jenkins I trust, but I hope that Barbara's character who transforms into the cheetah, that it's more motivations than just being, oh, Diana's prettier than me, or she's a admired superhero. I hope it's more layered. There's more complexity to that character than just being a generic like villain that's just jealous over the other villain. So I hope there's more to that character. And also I think that cheetah reveal, kind of being familiar with the character in the comics, I think that's going to be multiple transformations within the movie. So we'll see like variations of her continue to become the cheetah, the primal animal that she is in the comics. So I think that might have been maybe stage 3 before we get to the ultimate looking of cheetah. So hopefully the CGI progresses and get better as the film goes on. But like I said, in Patty Jenkins, I trust, because what she did with the first Wonder Woman was incredible. And I'm very excited for this 84.
I totally agree. I really hope that it's not this like woman who's jealous and woman who like it really does feel like she was trying to talk to her. She wanted to get her attention, which we've seen, I feel like, in a lot of superhero movies, that the person who just is trying to talk to the hero in normal form, and then they're like, oh, you're not paying attention to me, I'm going evil.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, man.
I'm also curious how we're going to get to 1984. I think that's like the big question, like what's that going to look like? Because Patty Jenkins has said before, and she said actually 2 years ago, like time is moving so quickly, I can't even recall, but 2 years ago at San Diego Comic-Con, she was saying that, this isn't a sequel, it's just another chapter. So I am curious to see how we get to the 80s, how we're bringing my boo Steve Trevor back. Like, I'm just curious how things are going to pan out for sure. But I'm like Elliott. I'm like, listen, I trust Patty. I do think that Patty and Gal are a bit of cinematic soulmates, so to speak. So hopefully this is great.
Wow, I did not know that. So that's really cool. That's interesting. I've never heard of someone saying that they're making another chapter, not a sequel. That's
kind of like a standalone type of situation, which I do have a theory about Steve Trevor. I think that there is some type of mystical god that might be in the mix with Pedro Pascal's character. He can make wishes come true, but I think Steve is really there. But I think it might harken back to the original Wonder Woman. I don't know if you guys remember the scene where he's like in that bath, like kind of that mysterious waters. I wonder if that has any.
We don't remember that scene.
Of course we do.
I mean, Elliott, I just said he was my favorite.
Your number one.
Of course I remember that,
So I wonder if that water had any mystical abilities that he's invulnerable to death, or maybe Themyscira has been holding him hostage because Diana's not able to become who her mother wanted her to be. So maybe there's some reason why Steve Trevor is back in the 80s and hasn't aged a day himself. So really excited for that reveal.
I really like that theory.
Well, if we're going to bring her back, if we're going to bring Steve back, which obviously we know that Steve's back, then we need to bring Antiope back. I'm like, bring Antiope back.
Yeah, that would be nice. I know we're going to get it in the flashbacks, but hopefully we get more than just the flashbacks of her, because she was great. Robin Wright is a great actress.
It's funny because my theory as to how Steve is back is Doctor Who related, in that there's an episode where there's a storm, and because of the storm, the person can travel through time, and gets brought back from the death. And I think that's the kind of thing, when he blew himself up, it kind of put him in through a wormhole and brought him back to the 80s.
She's riding lightning. She's in the sky. You might be on something. I mean, we pretty much wrote the screenplay, me and you, so we pretty much spoiler alert. So
make sure you get the credit for this movie.
That's how you know cat people are coming. We wrote it.
That was definitely Yael's point. She's like, I want all of the cat people in this film.
Speaking of that, I want to bring up a question from Zach really quickly, who says that he's also psyched for Wonder Woman 1984, and he has faith in Patty Jenkins. And then he says, you talked CGI and possible portrayal of Cheetah, but what do you think Kristen Wiig is going to bring to this role as an actress? And also an additional thing that they agreed with KB's articulation that Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot are cinematic soulmates. But what do you guys think that Kristen Wiig will bring to this role?
I had said before that she's great at what she does in comedy, and she's so wonderful. But my first time recognizing her was her very tiny role in Knocked Up, where she was the straight man in the jokes. And I think that she has the capability of doing something serious and being, not the funny, silly one. And I'm so excited to see her show us that, because I think that she can. And based on the trailer, she looks like she's doing it well.
I'm really curious to see it, because I kept thinking, I've only seen her in comedic things. I'm like, is this going to feel a little bit like SNL-esque? But if you believe in her, then I'm excited to see what she does.
Yep, I believe in her, and that's all that matters.
Yes.
I'm with you, Kristen. I've only seen her in in comedic roles, and so kind of her being, thrown into the cinematic universe, I'm kind of like, oh, I don't know, but I'm curious to see, what'll happen. I do find that like the first Wonder Woman and even this second one will likely be similar in the sense that like there's still some comedic undertones. Like they still have, some pretty timely jokes that pop up here and there. So, I mean, I can imagine they will utilize her in that capacity as well, but she will still take on like a heavier type tone. But yeah, I'm curious. I don't know. We'll see.
That also makes me think about the new Suicide Squad, because there's a couple people in there that I was a little bit surprised by. Flula Borg, who started out on YouTube. Davidson. Davidson, who is another SNL alum. What are you guys excited for the Suicide Squad, or what do you think? I feel like that's a little bit different than Wonder Woman, also in that it can be more comedic, like even more comedic. But what are you guys thinking?
Too many people.
There's a lot of people.
It's a big class. It's a huge cast.
Yeah. I think it might be bigger than like the whole Endgame, Guardians of the Galaxy, all that. Like, how many people are we gonna put in this?
Yeah. I don't mean to continue to be negative, but the first one had a lot of characters, and we saw 3 of them through the whole movie, and the rest of them were tiny bit parts. So now they've just added more.
I will say I think this film will have a very high body count. One proven like from the poster that they showed that there seems to be a group that have like similar costumes, like Margot Robbie and Idris Elba as Bloodsport. So I think that like a lot of those cast members, whether it be Peacemaker by John Cena and David, like Pete, I think a lot of those characters will die within like the first half of the film, and then we'll get our central 5 or 6 characters because it's a pretty loaded cast. But I think James Gunn seems another director that they brought very similar to Patty Jenkins and Matt Reeves. He knows these characters. He's pulling from the obscure comic book realm from Ratcatcher and Polka Dot Man and some of these like crazy characters. And apparently Taika Waititi is going to be playing a Starro, who's a very interesting character within itself. And seeing that character on the big screen is going to be fascinating. So I think James Gunn, as has been said a year and a half ago, they gave him the full DC catalog, and he chose to go with Suicide Squad. He didn't want to do Superman. He didn't want to do a Batman. He wanted Suicide Squad. So I think there's something in those characters very similar to Guardians of the Galaxy, where a misfit band comes together to fight a bigger bad. So I think there's something in this story that James Gunn saw, and he talked about how excited he was to write for Harley Quinn, which is to be the 3rd time we're seeing her in that role, which I think is so great as an actress. You can play the character multiple times, but it's different iterations of the character to keep that fresh and kind of exhilarating. So I'm excited for this one, excited to see King Shark and all the absurdity that James Gunn has for us. And hopefully it's a rated R, fun, just killer fest of just craziness of the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, I think James Gunn, I really love what he did with Guardians of the Galaxy, and the fact that he can take these characters that, like, again, we've seen some of these characters so many times, so to see like these new characters come in and them do something different with it is so exciting. I remember I was actually interning at Marvel when they were like first announcing that Guardians of the Galaxy was like maybe gonna start happening, and I was like, I don't even know like what that is. Like, I was like, are people like that are not in the comic world, like big comic book fans, gonna even know or care what that is? Like, it's a raccoon and a talking tree, and like what? And then they make you love these characters, and I think that they did that so well, and I'm really excited to see them start doing that in the DC world, like bringing some of these characters, like you said, Polka Dot Man, who I don't know who that is, but I'm excited to see them do something really fun with that.
Yeah, I will say that, like, I do feel like James Gunn prefers working with large ensemble casts. I mean, it really seems like that's kind of his jam in terms of like movies that he's directing. And so I think that he will know how to properly utilize each character that stays alive, to Ellie's point, because obviously we know that, some people are definitely going to die. But just like in the first one, I mean, realistically. But I do think that he knows how to work with large ensemble casts. I think he'll know how to give them kind of the screen time that they need. I'm more so just curious what the script is going to look like, because they said it's a 1970s war film.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious real curious to see like how we're gonna make this 1970s war film come to life. But I guess now that I'm thinking about it, I'm kind of like, James Gunn tends to like, like period pieces, it seems. Different time periods, of course, but I mean, obviously he enjoys this. So we'll see how to make this 1970s film work with 35 people in the cast.
I feel like it's gonna have a really good soundtrack too, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Oh
yeah. Oh yeah.
Totally forgot about that. Yeah, because that soundtrack for Guardians is so great. So
it's
great
so
call. Yeah, that soundtrack is going to be fire.
I mean, the soundtrack for the first Suicide Squad was also pretty good. I agree with you all that James Gunn does know how to do obscure characters and make us love them. He does know how to do giant ensembles and make us care about each one of them. I'm just saying that by the end, I'm going to be like, well, I would have rather focused on this other character that I've never heard of. And I'm excited to see what he does with Harley Quinn. I am right now loving her so much. I've been watching the animated series as well. I want more Harley Quinn all the time.
Yeah,
that's all I want.
I told Yael that I personally think this is not going to be the last time we see Margot Robbie on the big screen as Harley Quinn. Like, I feel like we have more to come. They better be doing a Birds of Prey too. I mean, like, but in addition to a lot of other things, but I do really love, to your point as well, Elliott, the evolution that's been happening each film. And now that, she's single, it's literally not about the Joker, which thank God, I'm so excited about. She's like stepping into her own. She's doing her own thing, and she's crazier than ever, which I love. So,
yes. Let's get into a couple of more DC fandom topics, and then we'll move on, just because we could talk forever about this. But a couple of other ones that I was excited about is Black Adam. I personally really loved Shazam because I lean more towards like the comedic superhero stories. So like for me, I was like, oh, this is so different than everything that DC's been doing. That's like super dark and I can't see what's happening. But like, so I really love that comedic aspect. And Black Adam, I'm really excited for The Rock to come in and like, do his thing as like sort of like an anti-hero situation. What are you guys thinking?
Well, I'm a big Rock fan. Again, growing up in the 90s, the whole era of the Attitude Era of wrestling, that's where The Rock was just the best wrestler of all time to me. Like, he knows how to cut a promo, as we saw in the panel. Like, everyone else had the directors, had the actors. It was just The Rock for the Black Adam panel, and he sold it for me. I'm a big fan of Black Adam, so really excited to see them that character come to life. And fingers crossed we get Henry Cavill and The Rock on screen fighting each other, Superman versus Black Adam. But I thought the panel was really interesting. I love a complex character. I love when villains think they're right, because I think that makes it so much more compelling than just, again, the mustache twirling. Oh, I wanted to, destroy the world. Like, there's he thinks he's right in the things he's doing. And I love he has no restraints, as he said in that promo. But I'm also very excited to see the JSA on the big screen for the first time. Hawkman, Cyclone, Dr. Fate, and Noah Centineo. I've seen all the Netflix films, so all the girls before, the sequel, the Burris film, and the One Date app film. I don't know, is he that strong of an actor quite yet? But The Rock is treating this like Ryan Reynolds did for Deadpool, and he has so much passion behind this project that he saw something in that kid is like, you know what, that's Adam Smasher, and we're going to bring him in this movie and really kind of open him up as an actor. I know he was also in Charlie's Angels, so that's my only reservation. But besides that, very excited to see The Rock, the people's champ, get it on.
Okay, because Elliott, I was waiting, because I'm like, what are you going to say about the perfect film that is To All the Boys I've Loved Before? So
the sequel did not work for me. The original I love. The sequel
didn't. Oh my God. I don't even have time to get into that. Like, the sequel didn't work for you. I can't right now, Elliott. I cannot. I will say that I didn't know until the day of Fandom, when Noah started posting, that he was going to be in the film. So Adam Smasher, listen, I actually have no frame of reference when it comes to Adam Smasher, like comic book wise. So I don't know anything about this character. So I'm just curious. I'm going in there blind, honestly, to see what Adam does with the role. But to your point, I do think that because Black Adam has been in the works for, is it 5 years? Maybe 6, maybe longer, honestly, at this point.
Yeah.
It's been a long time, because The Rock, like, truly wants to make it happen. if he says Noah's Atom Smasher, he says Noah's Atom, like I'm not worried. What I am worried about, or not worried, but I'm curious about, is whether or not they have the actors to play Dr. Fate and Cyclone yet, or if they're like, if they have signed on, but they're kind of keeping it quiet, or if he's still looking. So I'm curious to see who's chosen for those 3 roles, because the JSA on the big screen is a huge deal. And so far, we've only seen the JSA on DC TV. And since, well, you said there's going to cross over now, but I don't know if they're going to really use Stargirl in that regard. It sounds like they're going to use some new HBO Max shows to do kind of crossover things. So we probably will not see the CW Stargirl JSA crossover with this one. But I am curious to see kind of what that looks like. But, oh, Elliot, we'll have to get into the sequel of To All the Boys Later. I just, you're like, my blood pressure is getting high. I'm like, what?
I'm really excited about this. I think The Rock kills it when he like really wants to be involved. He really makes it good, and I'm excited to see this because he's so passionate. And like Elliot said, it's like Ryan Reynolds with Deadpool, and even if Noah can't do it, The Rock will carry the load, will be the one to make sure it comes out great. But I'm also, I'm a DC TV girl, so I'm like, I know the JSA. We have the JSA. Don't you bring a new JSA in? I mean, it would be really cool if they use some of the same people. It would be really cool if they reference it. They're not going to, but it'd be really cool if they did.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I'm excited. Again, here we are getting more characters that like we haven't really seen before on screen. That's all I want to see. More new characters. And then, we got to talk about the Snyder Cut trailer. Yeah. What'd you guys think?
Okay, I'm starting.
Let's hear it.
I was shocked at how much footage I had not seen before. I was expecting to see the same movie, just done a little differently. So I am very surprised at how much amazing new footage there was. I know that Zack Snyder makes beautiful movies. Good or bad, they're always visually stunning. So it's gonna be pleasant to look at whether the story is there or not. I will also say, and I warned people on our show with KB, that I'm a big X-Men fan, and I was so stoked for Dark Phoenix. And I was heartbroken. So I think to the fans, to the Snyder Cut fans, just lower your expectations so that if it's great, then you're so happy. Yeah. But if it's not, you're not destroyed. That's my advice.
That is good advice.
Yeah. I would say it is a brand new film. Like, I really watched that trailer and I thought to myself, this is wildly different from the Justice League that I saw. And it's kind of extraordinary. So I know that, Zach was saying that obviously he's going to flesh out Cyborg's story a little bit more, which is something that he's most proud of. And then we're going to see the Flash have kind of these new abilities that he has never had before. And so that's really interesting, but it really dawned on me when I saw that trailer why this is costing $75 million, because I was like, oh, it is a brand new film. Like the bare bones, I can't even remember what the bare bones, are from Zach plus Whedon's film. Like, I really have no idea anymore because I'm only just looking at it as, Joss Whedon's film at this point. So now that Zach has the opportunity, and I know that they're doing a bunch of reshoots and everything, I just expect to just see a different film. I'm not going to compare it to the first one. I don't feel like that's going to do it any justice, nor is it really actually going to be relevant because the story will be different in a lot of ways. And, I know that even in Zach's footage, we got to see Iris West, which has been like a lot of back and forth of whether or not she's actually going to be in the Flash standalone film. So I'm just curious to see it, honestly. Like, I'm going to go in there with fresh eyes. I mean, I do agree with Yael in saying that, like, Zach does make really stunning films, even if they're too dark, to Kristen's point. Sometimes they're too dark to see, and you're like, what is happening in this scene? I really cannot tell. He doesn't always, knock it out of the park for me. I hated Batman versus Superman. Like, what was the point? But I loved the first Superman because I'm a huge Kevin Costner fan. And so, I'm like, oh, this is so great. I love this origin story. So, I mean, it is what it is. But I'm just hoping to see it sometime soon. That's all. That's my only hope. I have nothing else, no expectations going in. I just want to see it soon.
Well, I am a very big Zack Snyder fan. He's like hot and spicy food. Some people like it, some people don't. But like you guys said, he knows how to frame. Like, he's like an artist. Like, I think of him, George Miller and George Lucas, all great visual storytellers. But their scripts and their stories sometimes are a little convoluted. But visually, he can just paint a piece of art. So I'm really excited to see this version, this vision that he had for his film. And just from like a human level, I think it's just really cool that, with unfortunate events of a family member being lost and losing his film at the same time, that he gets to get his vision out there. And again, I know people are not fans with this just because they want to see the future of DC. They want to just go moving forward and not necessarily go back to the past. But as someone, if I was ever in this position, just to get the opportunity to have your film out there is great. But as far as this Snyder cut goes, get more of Man of Steel, Henry Cavill. I'm loving that we're seeing Cyborg and that story that Zack Snyder's been saying from the beginning. He's the heart and soul in this film. We see that in the trailer, from his dad dying in front of him digging the grave, and I think it's going to be great. I thought Ray Fisher was a really great a character within the first 2017 film. So seeing that, more Wonder Woman, seeing this different version of the Flash, because I like Joss Whedon, but a lot of those Joss Whedon jokes for me in the 2017 film was just completely flat and dull and like early 2000 jokes. So it'll be really cool to see Barry Allen, kind of this version of him playing the character, and Iris West seeing her in the film. But the Batman speech at the end was very motivating. So I'm looking forward to it. This is a 4-hour cut into a weekly series, which I think is very fascinating. HBO Max, like, you're not going to just do a 7-day trial. We're going to at least keep you here for a month so you can watch this for a month. But I'm really excited for it. And again, I'm really glad that the artist gets to see his art kind of fully fleshed out.
Yeah, and that goes to Ray. That goes to Ray too, because he deserved better. Honestly, he deserved better as film. So, I'm hoping to see a lot more.
Yeah,
it's interesting that you talk about, Elliott, about us moving forward. I honestly feel like, based on the trailer, this could have just been Justice League 2. Like, they really could have just done that, and we would have accepted it as another movie. It looks like a whole new story. Let's just do that.
It's very true.
It's so interesting to see that with the same material, you can get so many different things out of it. That's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. The last DC Fandom big event that I want to talk about was talked only about very, very briefly, but I felt like it was very important and I was excited about it, which is a Static Shock movie.
Yeah.
How cool. I don't know if you guys, if anybody wants to start. If anybody's a Static Shock fan.
I've seen it was like early 2000s. I think it was like 2000 when it started. I've seen some episodes and somewhat familiar with the character. But again, and we're going to talk about later in this panel and this stream about diversity and having new characters on the big screen. So I think it's just so cool to see a 14-year-old African-American kid being able to see yourself on the screen if you're that age. I think is really cool. And I'm really excited to see who they cast, who they round out the cast with. And hopefully we get that movie in the next couple of years. So it's really great. They're bringing the comics back too. So it's a great day to be a Static Shock fan. So I'm really looking forward to see what they do with that film.
I didn't realize they're bringing the comic books back too. That's
awesome.
Awesome.
They're bringing the Milestone comics back. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what they do with it. I mean, I love the announcement, except I feel like it's just so far away. So for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're probably not getting Static Shock until like 2025. But I'm so excited about it. Like whenever we do get it, because it's just important to have that representation. But I will say, I have mentioned this before, actually a couple of times, that I would like to see Static Shock on the Black Lightning TV show, because I just think that also would be kind of a really good way to introduce the character as well. But maybe if they were to do that, they could keep the same actor in the live action film. Because, I think that now if they're really going to start to do this continuity, that would be awesome, because they have like a big opportunity to be able to do it the right way with this particular character. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I never thought we would get Static Shock, though. So,
we have a quick comment from Ronald Smith also saying, I never thought in my life they would get a live action Static Shock film. That's awesome. So
yeah, the animated series was such a hit. It's like a fan favorite. It's almost like a cult favorite at this point.
Yeah.
Like it was so good. I mean, I want to say a few months ago that there was a clip going around that was so relevant to our current time period, but also was from the animated series. And I feel like this is what we need right now. And it's such a beloved property that it's so exciting that it's getting a big screen. I also think bring back a live action TV show.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely, like you said, start off with Black Lightning, spin off into his own show,
have a movie.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what Marvel's doing, right? They're doing that with Miss Marvel and Moon Knight. They're introducing these characters on Disney Plus. So I think, and I think Marvel and DC is never a versus thing, but they learn from each other. So Marvel's super happy that DC's winning right now because it means people are still interested in the comic book genre. So I think, if anything, maybe HBO Max could be that hub, very similar to what Disney Plus is doing. So that would be pretty cool.
And speaking of what you were saying of Marvel learning from DC, I think like this DC fandom in general, like something we haven't seen before. Over 22 million views, I believe, on the 24-hour live stream. Just to have a whole, like a whole day event dedicated to releasing all this information, making it accessible for people. Like, I think this definitely was way more successful than the Comic-Cons that we had during this quarantine as well. Like, 100%. I think this could change the game for, how people can release content. And
it was wild. It was produced so well. Like, I mean, honestly, it was one of the best, virtually produced events, period, that I've seen thus far, kind of since COVID happened, and we've all had to kind of restructure how we do things. So, I mean,
what say hi, he's running around the floor.
If that is any indication of what it's going to be like on September 12th, when they focus more on the DC like TV properties, then man, I cannot wait. I mean, like, honestly, they could have done it, Sunday. They could have done it, like Saturday and Sunday, and I would have been like,
yeah.
But now, yeah. I mean, but now I still can't wait until September 12th. Like, I'm truly excited to see what they have. So.
Honestly, this probably was even better for them because they did so well with this. It's like now you're even more anticipating that next one.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So they're killing it. Yeah. All right. So next up, I want to get into another, I would say kind of related, potentially superhero trio, which is the live action Powerpuff Girls show that is supposed to be now coming to CW. I wonder if that will somehow maybe connect to any of the DC superheroes that are also in the CW.
That would be wild.
That would be crazy. But for those who might not know, this is a new project from Greg Berlanti, and they want to have writers and producers Diablo Cody and Heather Regnier lead this project, and it would be about these title superheroes, the Powerpuff Girls are now disillusioned 20-somethings who resent having lost their childhood to crime fighting, and they have to reunite as they're a little bit older to save the world. What are you guys thinking?
It should have been teenagers. They should have been in high school, and it should be written by the people writing Stargirl. It would be. That's what it needs to be. It's really silly and fun and leaning into the comic booky thing.
Yes.
They shouldn't be disillusioned 20-something.
Yeah, I sent this link to Yael like as soon as the news dropped, and I was like, no. It's like, no thank you for me, only because I do think that they're too old, and part of, kind of the appeal of the Powerpuff Girls were that they were young. Like, that's why I loved the animated series, because they were wild and crazy, and their guardian was insane, and also the villains were insane. Like, it was just a whole melting pot of pure insanity that you loved. And so I think, having them be teenagers max, like, I mean, like, they can't be older than like 16, really, in my mind. I feel like, would be kind of a great age, or if they were 14 or 15, just in high school, kind of navigating. I think I would be more into that. I don't necessarily agree that the writing team behind Stargirl should do it. Like, I'm totally fine with someone else taking the reins, because I do still have a few issues with Stargirl and how they portray their young teenage women, in the sense of, I'm like, why do these girls not learn lessons? But that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, I don't have an issue with the writing team, but I wish that they would just age them down a little bit more and kind of just give them, I don't know, a little something extra, like just a little something extra. Or they could just bring back new episodes of the animated one. I would also take that too.
Yeah, this is so someone that I'm kind of hot and cold with CW. Like I was when it first kind of launched off the Greg Berlanti verse, Arrow, Flash, and as it's kind of moved on now, there's still things that I like within the universe he's creating. I love again that he brings in different people to gender swapping, having more diverse characters playing the comic book roles and all that stuff. But my biggest gripe with the CW shows is and I'm not the target audience to some extent as far as their content, but the melodrama stuff and I already see it now. They're going to be breaking up with their boyfriends, getting back with them, having affairs. The mother knows that there's a twin sister somewhere. It's going to just be so over the top with this drama. And again, like you guys are saying, it's a fun show. They should be younger. They should be embracing life, growing up, learning from their mistakes, but they're going to be going back and like, oh, I haven't seen you in 5 years. And this is going to be so much drama. So fingers crossed that I'm wrong. It's going to be a fantastic show, but CW just loves their melodrama.
But that's, I think what I'm saying is if they were, let's say, freshmen in high school, right? They still have that bubbly, that's what we loved, was the bubbly personality of these little girls. And the villains were weird. They were just weird villains. So the idea that they're 20-somethings, are they like fighting mob bosses? Like what are they fighting? I want Mojo Jojo or whatever, the crazy.
Yeah.
I want him and the lobster. I want all of these characters. Yeah. I do think that Diablo Cody is a fun writer and can write some unique stuff. So yes, she's gonna be great, but I just don't want it to be the melodrama of the CW. And I think putting them as disillusioned 20-something is just begging for that.
Yeah. And I will say to Elliott's point, like, a lot of I think maybe your concern is kind of steeped in the fact that like Greg Berlanti, Sarah Schechter, and, whoever the third person is kind of in their partnership that executive produce all of these kind of superhero shows are involved. But hopefully the writing, because TL's point, Diablo Cody is a fun writer, so hopefully, Diablo Cody will have, a bit more autonomy and agency in terms of writing for this show, and maybe that'll just make it a bit more fun. And I don't know how they're going to pull off these crazy villains that we saw in the animated series, but they were top notch. So I also hope that they don't, get rid of them completely. And I also hope they introduce some new ones that are still kind of cool too.
I think that there's a lot to live up to because it is I feel like it is going to be hard to like translate some of those characters from animation to like a real life person. But I think it could be a really interesting challenge. And I am like a CW stan, but I agree. I don't like the melodrama. Like there's shows like Charmed that, I just feel like they leaned so heavily on like love triangles and boyfriends. And I'm like, I don't care about that. I want to focus on the magic. Or I want to focus on the mystery. Like I was really loving Nancy Drew and Katie Keene recently. And so I'm hoping that this is a show that they will, lean more on the satire and the parody. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I feel like I've seen recently on TikTok that the Powerpuff Girls have been pretty popular lately, and like people will do like recreations of some of their lines, but like in these like awesome, like super fashionable, like really cute outfits, just like in their colors, and I'm like, I would love to see like these super fashionable, like really cute, like bubbly, like fierce girls just like kicking butt. So I'm hoping that they do a good job with it because I'm actually excited for it.
Well, sorry. I was just saying I'm also a CW stan, so I get it. I want them to give us that top-notch content in 13 episodes or less, but give us that top-notch content.
30 episode season.
Yeah.
So, but Diablo Cody, refresh my memory, she is the writer for Juno and Tully, right? Okay, cool. Okay. So she definitely has that quirkiness to her writing sensibility. So hopefully she does bring that to the small screen in the show. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think this is one you can't take too seriously. Like, you can't.
Yeah.
And we have a quick comment here from Madness Arcade who says that they think it's in good hands with people who have experience in superhero shows. So I'm hoping that they're right.
That's true. That is true.
Fingers crossed.
Yes. All right, moving on to our next topic, The Haunting of Bly Manor. I'm so excited for this. We've gotten a poster. We've gotten a couple of like photos. I'll bring up one just so we can kind of take a quick little look. There's a lot of creepiness going on, dolls.
Yeah.
I'm super excited for this. Also, I don't know if you guys had seen, but they posted on Twitter this really cool like little help wanted ad. And if you called, they were saying that in like 5 days, you'll get reached out to about like a nanny position. And it makes it seem like maybe in a few days, a trailer will be out. So that's not what that means. But did you guys watch The Haunting of Hill House? And are you excited for this new?
I'm looking at Kay. I know we were talking off camera about Lovecraft Country and kind of scary moments. So, Kay, I would love to. Were you a fan of the first season? Did it scare you?
God, no, I didn't watch it. So, like, I do not watch horror. So it's honestly, like, Lovecraft Country is a one-off for me because I also do kind of feel like Lovecraft Country is kind of at the intersection of sci-fi, horror, and then, of course, kind of blackness and queerness. And so, it's just like this melting pot of things that I do enjoy, taking out the horror. So, during Lovecraft Country, during scary parts, I will close my eyes. So I absolutely did not watch the first season of this show, and I will not be watching the second one because it is the type of horror that is terrifying for me. Like, I could barely make it through Nancy Drew on the CW because it had kind of horror elements. And I was like, ooh, child, I don't know if this is for me. So
it did go there, I thought.
Yeah, I was like, oh, Nancy, I didn't really know that we were going to go here. At first, I was like, oh, she's just a detective, not a ghost detective. Like, I mean, what is happening? So, yes.
Oh, man. Elliott, do you have thoughts? I feel like you were saying you watched the season.
So I am a big horror fan. Again, I saw way too many horror films when I was a young kid, and here I am today, loving it just as much as I did when I was younger. But that first season, being a horror fan, I will say it legit scared me, and I don't get scared very easily because again, I've been watching since I was a young kid. So I will say, Kay, it is pretty scary. If it is something you dare to step into, lights on, middle of the day, definitely watch it then. But as far as the show goes, it's so well written. Mike Flanagan, the director of Hush, and most recently Dr. Sleep and Gerald's Game. He is such a fantastic director, and I just love the way he tells stories. And I love we were just talking about melodrama. I love the drama amongst the family, seeing them as young kids and how they grew up to be the adults. I thought the first season was so incredible, and I'm very aware that this new season is going to be anthology. The characters from the first season is not going to be back. It's a new story with some familiar faces from the first season because he brings a lot of his same cast with his films and shows. So I can't be more excited for this because I thought that first season was excellent. One of the best jump scares I've ever seen of any media. The bent neck lady, all that stuff. Was fantastic. The acting, the direction, that one shot scene with the funeral. I can't wait for this. And I'm really excited to see a trailer, hopefully the next couple of days.
Ooh. I don't do scary. I had to have my roommate sit with me while I watched Get Out to go. He's going to start running now. She's in the window, just so that I could watch the movie. I was told what the premise was of the Haunting of Hill House, and if I didn't not like being scared, I would be all about it. And the second one's this sounds great, except for that it's scary.
Yeah. I loved the first season so much. Like you said, the bent neck lady storyline. I think it might be like the best episode of television and like the best lead up of television I've ever seen.
Yes. Yep.
It was so well done, and like you said, those long camera shots. Like I just think Mike Flanagan is brilliant, and the fact that they have like all these hidden ghosts throughout the entire season, and they said they're going to bring that back for the next season as well. I'm just so excited, and I love that they're taking what is her name? Our lead actress
from You season 2 and season 1 of the first.
Victoria Pedretti.
Pedretti. Yep.
The fact that they she was such a standout in the first season that they're like, let's make this season around her, and she's going to play such a different character. It's the Taming of the Screw. I always say this wrong. Taming of the Screw. Yep. And I'm just so. Oh no, the Turning of the Screw. I'm like Turning of the Screw. Taming of the Shrew. They
I was
confuse
like,
me.
Shakespeare? I was like, they're doing a second season of Shakespeare?
No. It's the Turning of the Screw and a bunch of other projects kind of built into that from that same author. I'm just so excited to see what he does with it. I think he's just brilliant. So this is what I'm very excited for.
Oh my gosh. It's so funny how Elliott and I had, vastly different experiences watching horror as children, because I turned away from it, for the entirety of my life. For the rest of it, I was like, these movies are too scary. I can't handle it. Meanwhile, you've leaned into it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Now you're like, this is my favorite thing ever. And I'm like,
love it.
Everything you guys are saying right now is like a hard no for me. I'm like, I'm never going to see the show. Even though you said it's the best storyline you've ever seen. I'm like, that is so intriguing, but I cannot do it.
If someone could sit with me and go, okay, this is about to happen, then I'll sit and watch it. But they have to sit and be like, something's about to pop out.
Yep.
This
is funny.
Oh man.
Oh my gosh, too funny. And for our last news topic before we get into our main focus, I wanted to talk a little bit about the new announcement of Raya and The Last Dragon, that we found out that Kelly Marie Tran is going to be voicing Raya now. And we've got a little bit of artwork that we got to see. And she's going to be basically a new Disney princess. Are you guys excited about this?
Yeah, I was reading a lot about this one and it sounds fascinating. First of all, they're making it now during COVID, all remote, which is so cool. And it sounds very Moana-like in that she is a princess, but she's not a princess. She is the chief's daughter. And so I really love this idea of, a leader, a female leader who is like, I got to leave my family to go and do this thing that's important to come back to my family, which is a very, popular Disney storyline. But I think it's going to be really fun, and Awkwafina's in it. And it sounds like it's going to be great.
Yeah, Awkwafina's hilarious.
Yeah. I'm just always more excited for more Disney princesses of color, so I am looking forward to this. I do think, to Yael's point, it's wild that they're actually doing it right now during the COVID madness, because they pivoted right when things were like jumping off. I mean, I guess in March they were like, oh, things are getting bad. Let's figure out a new plan. And for them to say that this is the most stunning film they've ever seen, but everyone to be working on it separately from their houses and using things from their homes is just wild to me. So I am curious to see what it looks like. And also, now with this happening, I guess we kind of get to see what the world could look like, the world of filmmaking specifically will look like, if we ever have to manage another pandemic or another global crisis in some sort of way. They may just raise the bar on how things can be done virtually from home. So yeah, I'm curious to see.
I mean, from what I've seen, a lot of things can be done better at home.
Yeah.
What about you, Elliott?
Very excited. I'm a Pixar fan. The sequels are great. Toy Stories, Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, but I love the original Pixar films. And I love that in this last few years, whether it be Coco and coming up with Soul, and then obviously this film, I love that Disney is, and Pixar is now, like you guys are saying, are embracing new stories with new characters in the positions to be able to have these fascinating stories and these fantasy worlds that we could dive into. So kudos to Pixar, really kind of changing things up, but bringing us original IP, which I love from Pixar. So I couldn't be more excited. This imaging, this CGI rendering looks incredible. And I'm loving the casting so far. And it looks like it's going to be one of those, home runs for Pixar.
They also talked a little bit about the research they did into the cultures that they're including. And I think it's really needs to be applauded that they're doing that. They did that with Moana. They really invested the time and effort. And it makes you wonder why they didn't previously with, let's say, The Princess and the Frog, when they chose not to look into it and do any research and just put something out. Just something to think about.
I think they learned their
regime. The new regime at Pixar is really embracing research and hiring all types of people to make great stories. So I love that the new regime in Pixar has, like you guys are saying, embracing the creativity out there.
I am nervous because, Pixar films are basically known to make you weep. So I am, curious as to what's going to happen in this story where I will be, curled up in a fetal position weeping for like a 30-minute solid after. I mean, I know it's going to happen with Soul as well. It literally happens with any Pixar film that I watch. So I'm curious to get to that point in my life.
Now, I'm curious. I'm not sure if anybody is a Degrassi fan or if anybody had seen that originally. I love Degrassi, but originally Cassie Steele, who was Manny on Degrassi, was cast as Raya, and she went to like events and like promoted it and did interviews, and now they've recasted it. So, what do you guys think? I wonder why they recasted it. / do you have any thoughts? Or
I have no idea what happened there. But
the only thing I think of is maybe scheduling with COVID and maybe some scheduling conflicts with her schedule, and they just couldn't make it work. So that's the only thing I can think of. Hopefully it's nothing more than that, but yeah.
The only thing my first thought was they chose a bigger name.
That's what I was thinking also, which is interesting because I know Cassie Steele is someone who I feel like she's always like so close to working with Disney, but not quite. Like she was almost Gabriella in High School Musical, but then like she didn't end up doing it, and she's always like almost there, but then someone else is that role and then like blows up, and I'm like, I wonder what's going on, But I'm sure she, I think she's busy with her family and such, so good for her. And I'm excited for this as well. But I was just curious because I'm like, I know that they promoted stuff. Like I watched an interview, but yeah. Interesting. But switching gears a little bit, let's get to our main topic. Thank you guys so much for taking so much time with me today. I know we got a lot to say. So, this episode we're really diving into superhero culture, and so I would love to know. I think we talked about a lot of great things already as we kind of talked through DC Fandom and the Powerpuff Girls, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about like how you kind of discovered your love of superheroes or why you love them, or if you have any favorites, just to kind of like kick that off. Yael, do you want to start?
Sure. I discovered the X-Men through the animated series. And I fell in love, and that was where it started. And now the X-Men are my favorite superheroes, and I'm obsessed and love all of their movies except for Dark Phoenix, in Apocalypse, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I think that the reason I love X-Men, let me defend my reasoning here, is I think X-Men are one of the most relatable superheroes in that, one, they're addressing real life issues through a sci-fi way, which is a thing that sci-fi constantly does, is it takes real matters and real issues and makes it accessible to everyone by including aliens, by including mutants, by including these things to try to tell these stories. And I think that X-Men is one of the storylines and characters that allows those stories to come through and not alienate anyone as they tell it. Not people, it's really hard to tell someone that they're doing something wrong because they don't want to hear it. So if you do it in a way where they go, oh no, am I doing something wrong? That's the way to get them to figure it out. And I think that X-Men does it very well. And I try to live by the X-Men way.
Awesome. Do you have a favorite X-Men?
Okay, so my favorite X-Men is Siren because my name is Yael and her name is Siren and we're both loud. But other than that, Rogue.
That's great.
Yeah. Siren, everyone's like Banshee's daughter? Yes, Banshee's daughter, Siren.
What about you, KB?
Yeah, so for me, I kind of mentioned a little bit that growing up, I was actually a huge fan of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers. So Power Rangers, huge fan. And obviously they were kind of the high school unrelenting superheroes, so it was relatable in the sense that they still had everyday problems to manage, but then also these weird aliens that were coming that they needed to protect the world from. So it was great because also at the time, I actually grew up doing karate. So obviously like Power Rangers was like huge into martial arts as well. So I think that's another reason why I connected with them. So yeah, I loved everything about them. And actually, I'm originally from Texas, and so the actor that plays Jason is too. He's from the city that I'm from, so I just thought it was just like an awesome connection kind of growing up. So yeah, I do think that obviously they only had one Black Power Ranger, and they did him dirty a lot of times, and that's
Zach.
a big for me. Like, it really kind of broke my heart because Zach did not get the shine that he deserved a lot of times. But I still loved the show, and I even gave the film a chance, which was not terrible, y'all, but it wasn't great.
Yeah.
I feel that.
So I feel like that's where I am on that. Yes. I much rather prefer the 90s TV show because, again, like Elliott, I'm a 90s kid, so I kind of grew up with that. But then also that morphed, my love for Power Rangers morphed into the 90s Batman films, which I loved tremendously because they are extraordinary. Still, I don't care what people say. Like Uma Thurman as Poison Ivy. Yes, like, I mean, just, I loved them. I still do. I may or may not have watched one like last week. So, I mean, I just enjoy them. And so those are my jam as well.
Yes, I love those movies so much. You know, like that I feel like that was a quintessential, like they really got the comic book vibe and the humor and just all that stuff.
Yes, I mean, George Clooney was not a terrible Batman, y'all. Like, he just gave me a lot of the things that I needed. You know, Chris O'Donnell in his prime as Robin. I mean, that was like peak vibes. I was like, yes, I enjoy those films so much. And then honestly, I love Christian Bale as Batman too. So I'm not gonna lie, I do really appreciate kind of the new version of that as well. So again, we'll see what Robert Pattinson does now that we have more Batmans on Batmans on Batmans on Batmans. And also we're still going to have Ben Affleck as well. So what's happening? And then we're bringing back Michael Keaton, who also is fantastic. So, I mean, what are we doing? It's just going to be like a Batman toss-up. Maybe like one day we'll just have Batman standing in a form looking at each other. Like,
it'll be like Spider-Man, but Bat World. They'll just have every Batman meet up together and hang out.
Yes.
What about you, Elliott?
Yeah, going back to the 90s, it was the cartoons for me, as well as the comics, but mostly the cartoons. I loved the X-Men as well, Amazing Spider-Man, all that stuff was fantastic. But for me, I was introduced to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or the Marvel Universe during that time on TV, and loved it. But then when I saw Batman, the animated series, I fell in love. That's my favorite comic book character of all time is Batman. Bruce Wayne, he's a human being, and he's fighting, criminals on the street of Gotham, but then he can team up with the Justice League and fight Darkseid. So I just love that he's just a human being, and he just has, he has this tragic background. And also just the DC universe to me is just so, again, I love Marvel, but I just love how DC embraces, number one, the multiverse, as we, talked about with DC Fandom and opening up the worlds of, you can have a Joker film and a Shazam film, and that all these films are so different from each other moving forward, but also love how they embrace Metropolis, Gotham City, Themyscira, Atlanta, all the stuff, the universe, the world building is just so much fascinating. And also the Rogues Gallery for DC is just top notch for me, whether it be the Batman Rogues Gallery, Superman's, Wonder Woman's Flash, like Reverse Flash, all that stuff. So DC, been growing up with them. If you cut me, you'll see DC blood come out of me. Again, I love Marvel. I love what they're doing with the cinematic universe and everything of that nature. But DC, and that's why I'm just so happy with DC Fandom this past weekend, that as a DC fan, we finally get that light at the end of the tunnel. Seems like they're finally getting their stuff together and the future's looking bright. So, like I said, it started with the cartoons, kind of gradually went to the comic book world and fell in love with the graphic novels and different stories being told. And it's just so cool that we get to see these characters that were on a screen, a small screen, whether it be TV or on the comic book, now on the big screen. So DC for me, and it started at a very young age.
That's awesome. Yeah, I grew up collecting comic books because my dad collected comic books when he was little, so he would come home with an Archie comic or a Marvel comic or something like that and be like, here's your surprise for the night. And, I became a collector, like right away. My brother would kind of mess up the comic books, but I was like, no, we got to keep them pristine. And, I would read the comics and then as I got older, we would go to Free Comic Book Day and, just have like this kind of bonding experience. And me and my dad still do that. So like for me, like superheroes and like the comic book world really is like a father-daughter bonding thing. We get pizza, we get our comic books. And then, like I mentioned before, I interned at Marvel, and that was like an eye-opening experience. I feel like I learned so much about these superheroes that I like just, maybe didn't know as much about. And I read so many comics, and it was like such a great experience. And then, over time I started getting more into like the films and the TV shows. And like, I remember, like, I mean, it's recent, but like the Flash TV show, I just loved that so much. Just the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the way that they like bring their characters all together. And I just always loved how, especially with the Marvel characters, how they're flawed. There's always something, going on with them. They're relatable. I love Spider-Man has always been one of my favorites. And I love how, anybody could be Spider-Man, because he's wearing a mask. He's this young guy, but he could be me. He could be you. He could be, the guy down the street, because it's just like that whole, like, I don't know, just like the message of like, with great power comes great responsibility. And like, they're just those messages that kind of come out of the comic books. And so I just, that's kind of where my, my love of comic books came from. But yeah. Now, I think a lot of kind of what we all talked about was that relatability. And I think there's definitely something to, just these superhero characters and the fact that like you can see yourself in them, and that idea of like being a regular person and having something extraordinary happen to you that changes your life. I don't know about you guys, but I always was like, how cool would it be to like wake up with a superpower, like teleportation or something like that. But I do think that throughout the years, as superheroes have become more and more popular, there's also this sort of like obsession that has come into this world where like, there's every year there's like, 5 different superhero movies from all these different places. And what do you think it is about our culture that has become so enamored or obsessed or in love with this kind of superhero ideal?
Well, I know for me, it was a matter of like escapism, as well as like any films and TV show, but in particularly in the comic book world, going again, just imagining the streets of Gotham, the streets of Metropolis, being at the Themyscira and all the different fantasy elements that came with the comic book world. So I think it's a matter of, we all know 2020 has been a year to remember. So when you see a Superman, a beacon of hope, Wonder Woman, a beacon of hope, and even Batman, even though he has a dark side to him, he is the beacon of hope of Gotham. I think we strive for that excellence, right? That they have this passion to save their, the last man on Krypton, Themyscira, she had to leave Themyscira to save the world. So I love that, they put their desires aside for the greater good, so I just love that. And I think people inspire for the best in people, and you can see that from comic book characters. And I love when they have complex stories, and again, going back to DC, being a horror fan, I love the darker, more mature stories. And we see these tragedies, again, Bruce Wayne seeing his parents die in front of him, Barry Allen losing his mom at a young age, like I said, Kal-El losing his family, his whole planet. So it's just, they have these dark pasts, and they don't really harken on that. They're still able to use it as a driving force to do good for better people, to have the world still stand, to have people fight for justice, to fight what they believe in. And I think there's a lot of relatability in the real world that we go through. And that's why I think the superhero comic book world is really embraced in today's society, because we all strive for that greatness.
That was beautiful.
I know. I don't know that I have anything to add, because it's true. I mean, and it was so eloquently said. Yeah, Barry Allen actually is one of my favorite comic book characters, just because he's so earnest. And I think, he has had a lot of adversity in his life, but he's taken that adversity and he still believes in humanity. He still believes in the good in people. He always tries to see the good in people, and he always tries to do the right thing. And so I just think that, he has a very centered kind of moral compass, which can be very relatable. And even though he has these special powers and he has super speed, he doesn't think that he's better than anyone else. I think that is something that I love about Barry too, is that he is just so humble. And honestly, like, to me, Barry's real superpower isn't even the speed. I mean, he's absolutely brilliant, which I think, like, I wish they would tap into more on the TV show, but like he's actually brilliant. And so the way that his mind works and the things that he creates, and he's doing all of this from just a pure place and a pure heart. So like I can actually appreciate that a lot more. But for me growing up, I actually never wanted to have superpowers. I actually loved just kind of like, oh, you guys have those superpowers. That's incredible. But I also think a part of that is just I believe that we as human beings, anything is possible. And so I kind of grew up in that way. That's how my parents raised me. Like anything, you can do anything. So because I already knew that I could do anything, I was like, who needs these superpowers? I can do anything. But like, it's still great that these people had it and they were still making the choice to kind of use these powers for good. And so like, Elliott kind of prefers the darker stuff. I actually prefer darker villains, if I'm gonna be honest. Like I like these little bright, sprightly superheroes, but then I do prefer like a super dark villain because I'm like, what is the point? Like, tell me why you are so hell bent on like going against this lovely bright spot that is, you know, like it's like Reverse Flash when you're like, what is wrong with you? Like Barry Allen is the purest soul. Like, spend your time doing something else. But you know, like clearly, you know, he's out to get him in every timeline and every universe in the multiverse. But yeah, so I just think that like, you know, superheroes are very relatable. You know, you can really kind of see some of yourself and your choices in them. And I think that's why people really enjoy it.
It's funny, you both bring up these characters that you love and that you love the darker stuff, you love the bubblier stuff, or you know, these characters are beacons of hope. And I think that that's true. People do pick the one and they love and they obsess, and that's fandom culture. And it really, you know, bringing it back to what Kristen was saying, that like we have so much content coming out all the time. And up until I would say maybe 15 years ago, loving and obsessing about these things made you a nerd, made you a geek, made you an outcast, which again, like is a huge theme in comics, is being the outcast. But now it is the mainstream, right? The superhero movies are the mainstream. My parents get very mad they can't go to the movie theater and see a movie that's not sci-fi. So I was not raised with parents who were watching sci-fi with me and giving me comic books. I was raised with immigrant parents who were like, you're wasting time. I think that we, as fans, we find what we love and we hold on and we collect and we obsess and we write fanfic and make art and express ourselves through it. And now it's become widely acceptable, which is amazing. And I think wonderful that the outcasts are everyone now. We're all outcasts together. And I sadly partially blame The Big Bang Theory. That show was made for non-nerds and went, look, they're normal people. Look, nerds like comic books, but also hold jobs and interact and go to restaurants. And it's a weird thing, but I feel like it did something for nerd representation.
Yeah.
It's true.
I can't say you're wrong. I feel like tons of people watch that show considering the fact that it like legitimately just ended and still has a spinoff. And you know,
right. But that show wasn't for the nerds. It was for everyone else. And like my parents loved it and they didn't get half the jokes, which is, I was like, did you not get the Doctor Who reference? And they were like, no, that show, no.
Too funny.
I hate to give that show credit, but it do something.
And it doesn't hurt too that, I mean, social media has been the gift and the curse, right? We all have our platforms to voice our opinions and whatnot. But I think as the 2015s and 2014, 16 and on, tweeting, you know, as soon as you see a comic book movie, the spoilers, you want to be in the know, who's cast. I mean, and also too, we're seeing, especially for you all that are journalists, you're seeing these high profile, you mentioned Glenn Close earlier, season Guardians of the Galaxy, Robert Redford's and Winter Soldier. I mean, these high caliber, as Martin Scorsese say, cinema, actors and actresses want to be in comic book movies. Not for, because back in the day it was like the whole like, well, my kids are older, I want them to know that daddy and mommy's superheroes. Like, no, I want to be in a comic book movie because it's really interesting stories. These great directors are finding themselves wanting to direct comic book movies because there is something to tell in these tragic stories that we can relate to. So it is a matter of just like, everyone wants to be in a comic book movie, TV show, and so on and so forth. So it's definitely a tide of the turns, because if you were in a comic book movie 20 years ago, your career was over. So you were a joke of the town. So that pendulum has definitely switched.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like also because the writing has elevated in the last 20 years. I mean, these stories are, I think even if you just pull out kind of the superhero context or the powers involved in most of the films, like maybe not with X-Men because it's like pretty heavily driven, but you could take the powers out of Wonder Woman and you'd still think it's a compelling story because Diana is just a very well-written character. Like right. Just in general, as a woman, her childhood, how she grows up, like learning how to be a fighter, training, and then just, her compassion and wanting to see the world be better. And her blissful ignorance a little bit too, right? Like is also relatable. So I think, yeah, for sure. Like the writing has leaps and bounds. It's changed over the last 20 years. And so having these just kind of compelling backstories and them just being human beings, even with these other powers or like superhuman powers at the core of it, they're just humans that you can relate to for sure.
Just to counter your X-Men comment, Logan.
Oh, well, yes, Logan.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Fantastic.
Which Logan was the best movie out of that franchise for me. I mean, it was the top. I was it doesn't get better than Logan.
And it's the one where the powers mean the least.
Mean the least, right.
100%. Yep.
Yeah, Elliott, I think what you said makes a lot of sense of just like, now that social media is so popular, like the people that were the nerds reading the comic books in secret now can come together. And it turns out everybody was secretly a nerd, and the people that grew up reading those things are now the ones that are able to make those projects and write the stories how they'd like to see them, which is really cool. And I think something that we were kind of talking about was we've been talking a lot about like superpowers, but not every hero has powers. There's people like Batman who are just, maybe their power's money or maybe they're really good fighters or they just have a desire for justice. And so, I think that do you guys have any favorite superheroes with powers, without powers? And do you think that there's, I don't know, any kind of like difference in terms of fanning out over a hero with powers or without?
I'll go back to my conversation about, Batman is obviously my non-powered comic book fan of his character, but I'll go for the reverse in regards to, I think of Lex Luthor, who's one of my favorite super villains. He doesn't have any superpowers, but yet he's going against this God and Superman, and he's using, as we talked about, his brains to overcome this super being. So that even goes back to what Kay was saying. You don't have to have powers. You just have to use your brain to sometimes overcome. And again, he's the bad guy, but overcome someone you think can destroy the world in the blink of an eye. So Lex Luthor is a very powerful villain. And again, since he doesn't have any power abilities, but he's going toe to toe with Superman and also the Justice League in general. So I think a character like that, even though he's a supervillain, it's all about intellect. It's all about being smarter than your anti-hero, villain, nemesis, whatever the case may be. It's about using your brain. So I think Lex Luthor is a great character.
There's so many smart people in these superhero stories. Peter Parker is like a science prodigy. Like you said, Lex Luthor, Iron Man. Like everybody's a genius.
Yeah, I'm like, my favorite superhero is actually from the Marvel Cinematic Universe or from the Marvelverse is actually Shuri, and she's just brilliant. Like, I mean, she can build anything, she can do anything. She can basically be a surgeon, and she's a teenager. I mean, like, ultimately, she is top notch, and like she's fighting the bad guys using mostly her mind and the tech that she's created to help her brother. And T'Challa is not necessarily, I wouldn't say he's a superhero with superpowers per se, just because, he does take the serum, but mostly he uses a lot of tech and, he's done a lot of training. And then he has the Dora Milaje, who I consider superheroes, and they are just fierce warrior fighters. So like, I don't think it matters if you have powers or not. You can still be a superhero for sure.
One of my least favorite things about these is how smart everyone is, because I can't relate. So like, it really bugs me. The Flash is a perfect example, where Barry Allen, Caitlin, Cisco, they're all science geniuses. They're all like, oh, we have this problem, we're gonna science it. And I am not a science person. That's not my skill set. Engineering, biology, chemistry, none of that. So I'm watching it and I'm like, I can't relate to this. So the characters that I think I also don't like when a character doesn't have powers but has a magical tool. For example, Stargirl. Without her staff, she's a gymnast who can kind of fight.
I mean, but maybe that's her own personal power. I don't know if you guys watched Project Power on Netflix, but it kind of made me think of how, like, that you can take a pill and you can have a power, or there's also like just certain skills within yourself that, like, that are your like shining, things that only you can do, your talent, that's sort of like your superpower in a way. And that kind of makes me think of that with Stargirl, how, like, she's a gymnast. I mean, I can't do that. you know?
That's like being smart. I don't like it. It makes me feel inferior. Those aren't my skill sets. But speaking of Project Power, that made me realize that I would never, if they were like, we could give you powers. Now I'm like, wait a second, there are so many powers I don't want, that it never occurred to me, because the question is always, what power would you want? It's never what would you not want. And turns out there's a lot more of that.
I don't want to explode, that's for sure.
I don't want to explode. I don't want to be on fire. I don't want to freeze. There are a lot of things I don't want.
That movie was interesting, I thought, in that, like, the powers that they did get, it wasn't just like, oh, you have ice power. No, it was like, that actually physically affects you. And now you're like, you got a problem, because, like, if you're on fire or something, you're physically burning as well. That's not really a great situation to be in. I don't think I want that kind of power.
I agree, but I think it was such a clever idea that there were consequences, that he was on fire, and then when he wasn't, he literally had to live with burns now. And I think that's, from a writing standpoint, was very clever, but also made me realize that I never am going to take whatever option comes out for me to get superpowers.
You're not taking the red or the blue pill.
No, I'm also not taking the super serum.
Nope.
And that's
your
own
powers inside.
Exactly. I know my skill set, and I'm sticking with it.
I mean, that's a great point too, that Yael brings up in regards to Project Power, in regards to, we're seeing the whole thing of like, when is the comic book genre going to die off? It's in the last decade, it's been just continuing to grow up. I mean, Endgame, highest grossing movie of all time, and the TV shows are just as popular as they were when they first started. But it's so interesting that these companies are now finding subgenres within the comic book realm. So Project Power, at the core of its story, is about drugs getting out in bad areas, and how people make the decision to kind of enhance themselves, to make themselves feel better, and how Dominique's character, like you guys are saying, used her voice. That was her superpower. She didn't need a drug or a medicine to enhance herself. I think of, we're going to talk about TV shows later, but how like Umbrella Academy and Doom Patrol, how they take the reverse of that. Like, not everyone wants to be a superhero. They don't want those responsibilities, and how that, that psychological kind of torment for those characters. So it's always really interesting to see how sci-fi comic. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Just like how they twist it, like Shazam, to see like what would realistically, what would a 14-year-old kid do with powers? Oh, he's like, on the street, like, showing off his powers for money, like panhandling, or he's, practicing on YouTube, like, like, I love seeing these stories where you're seeing something a little bit different, of like, it's not just the typical, oh, I'm a superhero, I'm saving the day. It's like, okay, let's dive into like this deeper idea of like, well, what about this like social issue? Or what about like, what if we did this a little bit differently? Or I don't know if anyone watched Raising Dion, where it was like a mom and her son, who was like maybe like 9 or something, who was developing powers. And she's like, how do I deal with this, having a son that's becoming like a superhuman? And it's like, just seeing like different takes on these stories. Actually, oh, sorry, were you guys going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, I did not see Raising Dion, but I do enjoy when they kind of squander their powers a little. Like, I do like seeing them do that, because it is going to be new. It is going to be fresh. You're not going to know what to do with them. I think that's mainly the appeal of Shazam, is that it is a comedy mostly because they are kids who have these powers. And he's like, okay, do you expect me to just be responsible? I'm also a child. So like asking me to be responsible in general is hard, but then asking me to be responsible with superhuman powers is ridiculous. And they leaned into it, which makes sense. So I do agree with you, Kristen, in saying that like, it's fun, it's lighthearted. Eventually they learn the lesson, but they're not like, gung-ho about learning the lesson immediately. It's no Batman where like, he is so hardened by life and so hard by what happens to his parents that he is immediately the most responsible superhero on the planet. He's like, no, we can't do this. I can't, I seek justice and I have a huge responsibility. Like giving a 14-year-old powers is wild. I mean, like they should do some crazy things. I kind of want them to. Like you should kind of figure out your life with powers and figure out what this looks like.
If you want a show to watch that really goes into that, I will say that X-Men Evolution on Disney Plus is what you should watch.
Yeah,
it's funny you bring up X-Men. I was gonna literally say I'm so interested to hear your thoughts on the MCU's take on the X-Men, and are they gonna go younger so we can see that development, the mishaps of the young mutants, or are they gonna go older? A lot of people, with the Fantastic Four as well. So I'm curious, Yael, are you excited for Marvel to have their hands on the X-Men?
I'm so stoked. I'm so stoked for many reasons. Honestly, I already predicted that, and I'm gonna say it here on the record. Captain Marvel 3 will introduce Rogue, and she will take Captain Marvel's powers so that she will have the powers she's supposed to have that she didn't have in any of the X-Men movies because Captain Marvel wasn't there. So Captain Marvel 3 will introduce Rogue, and that will get us into our new X-Men storylines.
All right.
I think that they're going to introduce the X-Men sooner than that. Like, I think they're going to drop things in the Eternals. Like drop certain nuggets that will
Easter eggs,
yeah. Like I think they're going to be leading up to it.
Yes,
like,
but I think this is going to be the one that introduces Rogue, which gets us a Rogue movie, which then gets us to the new X-Men storyline of all new people. Yeah.
Now, but do you think eventually we will get to AVX, Avengers versus X-Men?
Oh, yes, I do. If we don't, then I need to call Kevin Feige now. Like, what would be the point? I mean, I feel
what are we leading up to?
I think if we do, it would be a new group of Avengers for sure.
Oh, it is. I definitely think it'll be the Young Avengers, which I think they're already leading into.
Right.
Well, they're already building up the Young Avengers, and I think, I mean, if Kevin's not building up to that, then we need to have a chat.
We know he is. We know he is. Like you said, the Eternal, or I should take away it's just Eternals now. I think they're going to introduce him there. Black Panther 2, there's been the rumblings of Storm coming into the mix and them potentially growing their love interest with Nakia. I wonder if Nakia just going to be put on the side now. And then also, the Doctor Strange into the multiverse, and Wanda's, her powers, as we all know, is that, the House of M, where she destroys the mutant gene. Is she now going to regenerate the mutant gene and create it herself? Because she's such a fantastic character, the most powerful character in the MCU, at least right now. So many possibilities. And we, like I said, we're all living in the DC fandom, but Marvel right now is like, oh, well, you guys have fun. Wait till you get the phase 4. We still got Blade to come out and the supernatural element of the MCU. So Marvel's still going to hit home runs.
And I think, too, even if they introduce Storm in Black Panther 2, which, I've been reading kind of the predictions on what they'll do there. Listen, Storm and T'Challa were married for like 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes. I mean, it was the shortest marriage, I feel like. So we don't even need to go down that road if we're not going to, make it pay off long term. And since it doesn't in the comics, if we're going to, stick to that, cool. Then Nakia can still whatever. Although I will say I prefer Nakia to be single. That's just me. Like T'Challa, whatever it is you're doing. Nakia's out here trying to save the world, and T'Challa's not on board. So like honestly, she can be single. But
we might have a little entanglement with T'Challa and Nakia and Wonder Woman.
No entanglements. Oh my God.
I just worry about all of the younger X-Men that they just like brought in, the young Scott and the young Jean, and like, I'm sorry, your story's done. We're starting over.
Yeah, they're not recast. I feel
like for them though. Because you know they came in being told, like, you're the new Jean, you're the new Scott. No.
Well, I'm sorry, guys, but I think they're definitely going to recast. I don't see them keeping anyone from kind of the old franchise. I think they'll start fresh and kind of cast new people. If they do bring back some old people, I don't know. It might be like the OGs. Like, I don't know that it would be kind of this new generation. I think it would be like truly the OGs.
I was thinking more of like Michael Fassbender and
James McAdams, like the OGs from the beginning.
Yeah.
Now, there's obviously so much going on in all of these universes, but we have a question here from Steph, Aggressive Comics. We're in like sort of there's so much superhero stuff going on. We're in a sort of a superhero movie fatigue. How do you think the genre and culture will evolve? Should it, or has it been exhausted? Do you think we need to take a break, or do you think like there's just so many stories we like need to keep going?
I think it's interesting. We were talking about the different sides or the different subgenres, and I think that's where we're going to go. Right, New Mutants, which is coming out in whatever theaters are open. Whatever. But that's taking a superhero movie and making it a horror film. So going to be the only X-Men movie I don't see. And Logan, right, took superhero and made it something else. And I think that's hopefully what they're going to do is go, okay, I mean, Joker was a drama. So like take a superhero movie and put it into a different genre. And I think that's interesting. And I can't wait for a big heisty movie because I love heists.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think like, and I think that's fun too, just to see like different like shades of genres over all these superhero characters, and like, you know, seeing something a little bit different or you know, these twists on these movies is really fun. And I think that's what you would see in the comic books too, is, you know, like that they take this one story and then they give you a whole bunch of different versions of it, and now you get to do that but like on the big screen and see it in all these different ways. And Yeah,
I think there's ways to also just make it more timely, more relevant. Like as time goes on, I think that they can do a lot with the different storylines. I mean, there's a plethora of kind of, you know, comic books that they can pull from, in addition to kind of fleshing those out with brand new ideas and trying to figure out, you know, kind of what else that they want to show on screen that may or may not have been seen in a comic book previously, but they're willing to take these characters to another level. So I think that they have kind of a wide range of material to choose from, but also there are tons and tons of new up and coming creators who are excited about doing things and showcasing new aspects of these classic characters. And so, I think that we will be seeing kind of more superhero genre stuff for a long time. I mean, at least another 10 years in my personal opinion, but.
Now, my other thought is kind of what you were mentioning is a lot of the comic book adaptations, and I think we're seeing a lot of really cool ones. The Boys, Doom Patrol, Umbrella Academy, a lot of like fun twists. I personally love like those like dark humor, like anti-hero, dysfunctional groups. But also, you know, as we mentioned with Project Power, that was an original superhero movie. It's not an adaptation of something, and it didn't really perform. You know, I think it had a lot of mixed reviews. So do you think that there is a space for like more original superhero content, or do you think we're kind of more stuck in like a reboot world? I mean, not even just in comics, kind of everywhere, but like, you know, in a reboot, remake adaptation world.
I think it didn't perform because they didn't promote it. I think that's what happened, is that people found out about it and loved it. People watched it, they enjoyed it, but they had to find out about it first. I think that's the difference, is Marvel puts so much money into making sure you know there's a movie coming out. And I don't think they did that with Project Power.
So I think there's always space for new creators. Always. I think that like in this time and resurgence of reboots, which again, you know, being a 90s kid, I do feel like that we enjoy reboots because of the nostalgia, but I also love to see fresh takes on things. Like I do think that we need brand new, fresh content coming out. With Project Power specifically for me, I actually didn't enjoy it that much, but it wasn't. It for me was just kind of these glaring plot holes and like issues with writing. It wasn't the concept. Like I actually really enjoyed the concept, but for me, it just wasn't tied together tight enough for me. And that's why I didn't like it. But to Yael's point, I think that I think heavily investing in the marketing of your film or your TV show really, really, really makes a huge difference. And sometimes kind of taking the silent or the more secretive approach isn't always the best way, particularly when it is brand new, IP. If it's older IP, then you can kind of hinge on that a little bit because people already know the characters. But when you're starting something new and they don't know the characters, I think it's really important to kind of really hit the ground running out of the gate in terms of the marketing aspects to make sure that, your content really has a chance. So yeah.
Very true. Yeah. That marketing, I feel like sometimes a lot of shows on Netflix, I feel like they kind of go under the radar, and it's like, if you're like us and you're like looking for it, like I'm always like, whoa, what's the next show? What's the next movie? I'm like, of course I'm going to watch it. But I feel like the everyday person might not hear about half these things. And it's unfortunate because then it does kind of, take away an opportunity that like maybe something could have performed even better if we had given it the chance or given it that push.
Yeah.
And then maybe they would get a third season on Netflix it's
like the first seasons of shows are like meh, the second season's amazing, and then they never do another one, and it's like
we're like canceled, and you're like, no, I really wanted to see what was gonna happen.
Exactly. Like I feel like Umbrella Academy, one of my favorite shows, and I love season 2 of that. I feel like it still hasn't necessarily hit the zeitgeist as much as the show. Like I love the Umbrella Academy, especially this most recent season. So it is very interesting the way Netflix markets their products and what sticks. Like Stranger Things was like the biggest lightning in a bottle situation as far as promotion and marketing across all platforms. But for some reason, it seems like their other shows just kind of miss the pulse of the audience. But hopefully Umbrella Academy season 3 gets announced pretty soon. I mean, we see The Boys already got announced for season 3 before season 2 even hit the market. So I feel like Netflix, they really are like, I think they're working with Mark Millar from Kingsman. They have him doing like a run of comic book shows and movies. We all know the J.J. Abrams deal with Warner Brothers, so it seems like they're locking these great minds and trying to make their content Apple TV. I'm wondering when they're going to scratch the comic book world. So really, really interesting stuff that they're doing right now.
Absolutely. Now something that we kind of touched upon a little bit throughout this episode that I'd love to talk a little bit more about is women and people of color in the comic book space, in the sci-fi space, in the superhero world. And I think, already we're starting to see some really great stuff with like Lovecraft, but I think in general, we haven't seen as much. And I think Marvel's another one that is starting to like add more people of color into their like film space, especially with like Eternals and the new Shang movie that they're working on. But I don't know if you guys have any thoughts you want to share about where you guys think we're going and if the superhero world is becoming more inclusive.
I mean, I think, Wonder Woman, Captain Marvel, Black Panther showed that people will go out to go see and support these films. For the longest time, it was like, a black superhero, a woman lead superhero doesn't sell tickets, right? But that tide has changed. And I think Marvel, it's been said that Kevin Feige and Permogul, who I can't think of what was his name? I can think of his name right now, but it was like a big fraction with Marvel for a while. Like they didn't want to be as diverse as they were now. Kevin Feige was like on the brink of walking out of Marvel. But once they kind of got rid of that regime, we see the Black Panthers of the world. We see Captain Marvel, and same with DC. I think DC has been kind of doing a good job at beating Marvel to the punch. Whether it be Wonder Woman, Cyborg is the first kind of black superhero to be included in the Justice League and on the big screen. So it's always interesting to see where things kind of head into and seeing the people behind the cameras too, women directors. I think of Kate Shortland with, everything she's got going with, Black Widow, and what we're getting with, I can't think of the director's name now for, what was that?
Nia DaCosta
for Captain Marvel 2, and then the Eternals. I can't think of the director's name, but she's a up and coming independent director and a female director. So, and it's really interesting too. I would love to get the panel's thoughts on like the whole. How do you guys feel about I think of Olivia Wilde, like a woman director directing a woman's story, or Ryan Coogler directing a black story, or so? How do you guys feel about the conversation about only a black director can direct a black story, or a woman can only tell a story of a woman superhero, or, you know, Asian or any minorities telling their stories. How do you guys feel about the art of picking the best person for the job versus kind of having who they think will be able to represent the character on the screen?
That's
I think anytime you know, have someone from that same cultural background, they're going to be able to create art in a way that is unique because it will authentically depict those particular characters on screen. I think that they will have a certain eye for things. I mean, just even from like a technical standpoint, you know, having having someone like Ryan Coogler direct Black Panther, just from a technical lighting, visual standpoint, having someone Black, you know, kind of showcase these Black bodies on screen, it makes a little bit of a difference, because I think that, like, you know, he has an eye for that. Like he's looking at things from a different lens. And so, you know, I joke about Nakia being single in the next one. But realistically, that was kind of the first time in the superhero genre space on screen that we were able to see Black love really represented in that regard. And so I think, and Ryan said that he really wanted to push for it. Just, I mean, obviously, like, it's very important to him in his personal life. And so it's very important to him to kind of have those depictions on screen as well. So it was the first time we saw that, which is something that I love. I want him to keep that thing going. I mean, maybe we give Nakia, you know, a new Black boo. I don't know. Because clearly her and T'Challa have different life views about things. They're going in different places, which is totally fine. But if T'Challa ends up with Storm, then we'll get, like, you know, another representation of that. So I do feel like having not only directors, but writers and camera men and women, and having everyone from top to bottom, having PAs on set, having hair and makeup, I think it really makes a huge difference in terms of kind of the content that you're putting out. And it will make the experience richer. You'll be able to see things from a different perspective. And I also just kind of feel like if we're going to go with the person who's quote unquote best for the job, generally speaking in this industry, it's like the same 5 people you will notice. Yeah. And at some point, because I said this before, and I said it with casting, you know, like brand new talent, like, you need to give people a shot. We need some new people. We need some kind of fresh blood and fresh perspective in terms of this industry and what we want to see. And so, you know, Nia DaCosta, I mean, Candyman's not even out yet. It was supposed to be, but obviously COVID, so it keeps getting pushed back. But now she's going to direct Captain Marvel 2. And I'm just hoping, you know, we get to see something extraordinary, because now we have kind of a Black woman at the helm with this. And hopefully we get to see, you know, something extraordinary come out of this. So, yeah, I mean, I personally think let's give people a chance, and I'm always going to promote kind of diversity behind and in front of the camera because I just think it makes for richer experiences. So,
I agree. I think when people say, you know, why not just give it to the best person for the job, the issue is they don't bring in people that aren't white men. And so they go, we're going to give it to the best person for the job. The best person for the job for a story might be the person who lived something similar, who experienced something similar. There's like a little tiny example of a woman director for Wonder Woman. At no point did we look up Wonder Woman's skirt, whereas in Justice League, we did it at least twice. At no point did I think, I need to look up Wonder Woman's skirt. There's no reason this angle needs to exist. And it did just to look up her skirt. So it's a minor thing that, like, a woman director would notice and go, wait, why are we angled up her skirt? Mm-hmm. I also think, you know, another example, Shazam, right, had a disabled character, and the idea that, not to spoil the end of Shazam, this disabled character becomes a superhero and now is able-bodied. And I think that if a disabled person was involved in any part of the creative process, they would have said, hey, I don't know that we want to say that we need to fix somebody. I would say the same thing about, we had a fat character, and I am a big fighter for body positivity and body diversity on screen. And I think that he then got fixed again, also, not to spoil the end of the movie, into a superhero. So when I heard that there's supposed to be a Faith movie coming out, I'm waiting for that to still happen. Faith is a plus size superhero. So I think that when you have a creative team that includes people who've lived something or can speak to something, it makes the story better. It makes the movie, the show better. And I think that for a long time, you know, when a show would have a Black character, they'd bring a Black writer. And so that writer was told that they can write for Black people only. So then when we have a Black movie, why are there not Black writers on it? That's the question. So I think that it's really important to have a diverse team making the movie, starring in the movie. As an audience, we want to see ourselves, right? That's the whole point. We talk about relatability a lot. And I would like to see more people that look like the world that I actually live in.
Yeah.
That's a great the world that we live in, you know, like I think that sometimes people seem to think that that's so narrow, and it's like there are so many people. Look at us here today, like there are a bunch of people from different backgrounds, of different, just completely different stories and situations that, like I want to see that when I'm watching something. I want to see someone that's like me. I want to see someone that's like, this other person, and I think what KB was saying about just like more authentic stories. There was an article that came out during the quarantine about the show The Bold Type, and there's a character played by Aisha D. She's a Black woman, and she talked as an actress about how she just felt like her story as a Black woman didn't really make sense. And I think even when I was watching it, I remember I did a review and I said, I don't really get this story because to spoil parts of season 1, she's in a relationship with a Muslim woman, and the Muslim woman gets attacked by a police officer, and she steps up as a Black woman and kind of like, goes up against this police officer. And it's like, we're living in a world where like a Black woman would not be able to do that and feel comfortable, or, and it's just like, clearly someone of color did not write this story. And even as an actress, she said, I felt uncomfortable and like my authentic story was not being told, and that like my experience was not being told. And I think you could like, that's something just like as a viewer I noticed. And it's like, if I noticed it, I'm sure other people noticed it, and other people felt like that doesn't feel right to me. That's not my experience. Like that doesn't make sense. And that's not it's just like not a good story because it doesn't make sense. And I think to be able to see,
we could talk about The Bold Type offline.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
To see people being given a chance to tell their experience makes it a realer story, that makes it authentic and allows you to see your experience come to life on screen in a way that like makes sense and doesn't seem like, what is this? What am I watching? This would never happen. And, not that every story needs to be realistic, but, there is I think the best stories have these depths of realness to them that allow you to connect to them, because you're like, yeah, this is a story about like, science fiction, but also we're talking about like, the issues with, drugs out on the streets, or the issues with, just other social issues that people are dealing with every day. And I think when you have people that can actually like tell those stories, it just makes it so much more authentic and so much better than someone who has no connection to that at all.
It's funny that you say, that they can, even though it's not real, they can put in things that are real. And I think it's also the opposite, that you have someone who goes, this little detail is going to take everybody out of this. The detail of her talking to the cops in The Bold Type, any viewer goes, that's not how the world works. Mm-hmm. So I think that like having somebody there, just having people there to be like, it's a real small detail, but it's going to change everything.
Yeah.
I think The Bold Type, I have like a bunch of contentions with, but I do like overall really enjoyed the show. But to Aisha's point, her character is the most frustrating for me as an actual Black woman as well, watching it, because I'm like, literally none of this makes sense. But that's actually something that I'm wildly concerned about with this new Batwoman. I'll be honest, because I feel like the CW, when it comes to the Arrowverse, they honestly do not have a lot of Black women writers in their room at all. And it shows, because it shows on The Flash, because Flash is my favorite TV series, but like, y'all, Black people do not eat whatever it is that Grandma Esther makes. Whatever that dish is that they're always talking about, those noodles, like what are y'all saying? That is not a traditional Black dish at all. I don't really understand why they're eating it.
Grandma Esther's Jewish. That's what's confusing to me.
I was like, what is happening? Like,
This
Grandma
noodle dish is
Esther's
very
noodle.
Jewish.
And I was like, this is not Black. Like, I don't understand what's happening. So, like, besides that, and the fact that, like, you know, a whole other issues with just how they portray a Black family. It's like, you guys made such great strides by having this Black family on this TV show. I think Joe West is one of the best TV father characters on television, period. Like, warms my heart, but they don't have authentically Black experiences. And so I'm worried with Batwoman because I only know of one Black woman writer on that show right now, but we're probably going to need more because honestly, like, we're not a monolith. And by probably, I mean, we definitely are going to need more. And so it's just like to have everything hinge on this one Black woman in the writer's room and just only using her experience. That's also a lot of pressure, I feel like, you know, for a show to like, okay, well, you know, we have a lot of other people in the room. We have this one Black woman that we're going to ask all these questions about how to make this central Black woman character, you know, better and about her experience, etc. So I just feel like I'm worried because we do need to see more Black women writers in the room specifically with these issues. And I asked the Flash's showrunner straight up if they were going to hire some Black women because I was like, sir, I mean, you're Black, it's great, it's a stride, but also are there going to be women in here who could also speak to like Iris's experiences? So I think you do kind of need that, but.
On Batwoman, speaking of, she's also a Black queer woman. And I think that is something that the intersections are not being met.
Right. And so it's great to have queer women in the writer's room, but a white queer woman's experience is not the same as a Black queer woman's experience. And so I think that needs to be able to translate on camera as well, and just within the storyline. So I'm really, really hoping that they give her, because she's a great actress. I really liked her in God Friended Me. I'm really excited to see what she's going to do as Batwoman. I know she's going to kill it, but I think it matters. And just even taking a show like Black Lightning, who has predominantly Black writers, you know, it's helmed by a Black team. You can tell those subtle differences, and talking to the actors on those shows and saying, we've never had an experience working on set like this before. It's just so unique because they know that there are people there who understand. That translates really well on camera and on film and throughout the storyline as well. So, yeah.
Yeah,
so, sorry, Elliott, long-winded way of answering your question.
No, this is what I love about these conversations. It's the in-depth conversations that we're having, and I hope that going to CW, I hope they take a page out of HBO's book. You know, I think of what they did with Watchmen and how that diverse group of people were, and you saw that on the screen. And then more recently, Lovecraft Country with Misha Green. So hopefully, you know, because back in the day, I'm a big Game of Thrones fan, but their writer's room was lacking women, and it showed kind of in their shows, but they kind of turned that ship around and kind of changed that narrative. So hopefully CW can do the same thing.
Yeah, and I think what's really great about these projects is that like the fact that we want to, like, there are people that want to be in these writer rooms, and there's people like us that want to see these projects. Like, I think stereotypically people of color and women have not been seen as people that like this kind of stuff, you know, that like sci-fi, that like, you know, superheroes. And it's like, clearly that's not true. Look at all of us who want to see this stuff, and the people who want to write about it, and the people who can write about it and tell these authentic stories. I just think it's so exciting that, like, I mean, it sucks that it's taken this long, but that we're starting to see, like how you said, Black Lightning has a mostly Black writers room. Like, that's incredible. Like, the fact that, like, we even have a show like Black Lightning, the fact that we have all of these characters that you know, like, you can see yourself on screen and like feel that connection or that relatability. And I want to see more diverse superheroes. I want to see a Latina superhero. I want to see, you know, more queer superheroes. I want to see, you know, the fact that we're going to get, is it Shang-Chi? That we're going to get Shang-Chi. Like, that's incredible. Like, an Asian superhero, like,
Miss Marvel, we're getting you know, Indian descent from Macaulay Khan. So yeah, it's going to be awesome as well.
I want to see disabled superheroes.
Yes,
I want to see it all. Which I think actually we're getting. So we're getting a deaf superhero in Eternals, correct?
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So yes,
We'll see.
I mean, it's already been filmed.
I'm saying we'll see how it is. We'll see how it is.
Yeah.
There is a difference between
Laura, she's on The Walking Dead. Laura,
Walking
I
Dead, yeah.
can't remember her last name, but I know she's on The Walking Dead, and she's a really good actress. So I'm hoping that they.
And she is deaf in real life.
Oh wow, okay. I think there also is something to seeing. It's one thing to have representation, and it's another thing to see it done well, and it's another thing to see it done authentically. Like the fact that you said that the woman is actually deaf, that's going to be playing that role. To being able to see, like, not even just the fact that, like, oh, we have a deaf superhero, but like as a deaf actress, you can play that role. And it doesn't have to go to someone that is a name just because they're a name.
And sorry, guys, I think it's hearing impaired. So my bad.
Oh, hearing impaired.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
It's deaf.
Oh, okay. I was like, I'm trying to make sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, that said, I think it's surprising that it didn't go to Scarlett Johansson. I just think that's
like every role.
She can do it all, like Scarlett.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, play all of the roles for all of the people with all of the identities that have nothing to do with you.
Yeah, because they saw the best people for the role.
Well, yeah, but I'm also like, at what point as an actor do you also say, yeah, I'm not doing that? Do you know what I mean? It's like, I'm not going to do that. Like, also.
I mean, I think it's difficult because I understand what actors say, like, I want to take on this challenge. And that's a totally reasonable thing as an artist to feel that way. The issue is that, for example, the trans role that she was going to take, the issue is that trans actors are not offered cis roles. So until that happens, you sit back and you let them have the roles that are available to them, because it's not fair if one role is available to one person and 30 roles is available to you, you don't take the one that they can have.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there should be more trans actors playing in all the roles, but here we are.
Yeah.
So.
Did you all watch, and this is totally off kilter, not even superhero realm. Did you watch the Ryan Murphy, what was it called? Hollywood? Did you guys watch the Hollywood show?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of that scene with the young actress named Camille, who's in Homecoming, and she was her
name's Laura Harrer.
And then Samara Weaving's character, where like Samara saw that she was fit for the role, but she kind of just gave up on the role and just assumed that she was better for the role. I hope that's another thing too, is in regards to not just giving the role to the person that fits within that identity or identify with the character, but they also have the means to carry on or lead the film and to sell the film and to give them the best performance they are for that particular script. So that's another thing too, is just not hiring the person just because you a sympathy hire, or just like, they're black, so they can just play the role. It's like, give them the role because they actually earn it and they have the sensibilities to bring whatever they're trying to get out of the script as well. So totally random. Like I said, that show was kind of hit or miss for me with Hollywood, but yeah. So a lot of Ryan Murphy shows, but yeah.
I feel like people either loved it or they hated it, but
yeah.
Yeah, it was an acquired show. I think a lot of his shows are, sometimes they're like hit or miss, or they start off good and then they kind of get a little funky.
Fizzle out, yeah.
But yeah, you guys make a lot of great points. Is there anything, I want to start wrapping up a little bit just because I know we've been on for so long. I don't want to keep all of your time. But is there any other things you want to add to our superhero discussion before I start wrapping?
No, I think we touched on it all. I'm excited for X-Men. I'm excited for DC. More diversity, more creative stories. Keeping it original. Playing in different genres. We talked about horror. New Mutants, whether it be Blade, whether it be Doctor Strange. Give me some more horror in the superhero realm. But to keep it fresh is like to keep it original. Have these different voices to have their vision out there, and keep making these great stories that come from the comic books.
What a recap.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm like, yes, all of this. Elliott, yes.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. You'll be able to find information and links to Pop Culture Planet and our guests below. But if you want to follow Elliott, KB, and Yael, do you guys want to share where they can find you? Elliott, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I am on YouTube at Movie Files, trying to watch anything and everything I can, whether it be small independent films, the big blockbuster films that are apparently we're getting at the theaters now. But I love to talk about everything. So it's not just big blockbuster films. It's not just horror films. It's literally, I watch, especially Netflix. I can watch Working on Netflix, or I can watch, Project Power and TV shows, Warrior Nun, all the way down to Ozark or Dark. So I try to keep it as versatile as possible, but also to have a black guy like me, as far as like I watch all different types of stuff, CW to HBO. So if you guys like that kind of content, check me out there. And I try to stay as active as possible with social media, whether it be my thoughts on casting news or my thoughts on stuff that's going on in the world. So follow me on all the social medias in the description below.
Cool. Awesome. You want to go around this way? This way? KB?
Oh, okay. So yes, you can find me. It's here, but on Twitter and Instagram, on social media, at the Lady KAYB. Yes, I do cover a lot of superhero things. Yael and I actually have a superhero show, and it is called the Super Lady Hero Hour. So yes, you can check us out on YouTube, Fanversation channel. And then also you can check me out for other things, because honestly, I love superhero content, but I also love dramas, specifically legal and medical. So I watch a lot of TV. I watch a lot of films. I cover tons of film festivals. I also cover Comic Cons. So I do a lot of coverage. Interviews are my jam. So hire me if you guys have, like new films coming out and you have interviews and you have new TV shows, interviews. I spend all of my time, honestly, at junkets. And yeah, so I, like Elliott, I watch every network, literally every network, but the CW in the fall is generally 80% of what I'm watching. So, ironically enough, but yes.
I'm everywhere at Yael Tygiel. That's YAELTYGIEL. I know it has a lot of letters. I know it's super foreign. I, like KB said, we have Super Lady Hero Hour. That's right. I learned it. And actually, you all were talking about not knowing what to watch. There's so much on Netflix. I host a show called Streaming Wars over at That Hashtag Show, where we discuss all the different streaming platforms and recommendations on what to watch. And we also tell you what's worth skipping. So Streaming Wars on That Hashtag Show. Also, I'm on YouTube. I'm trying to think of the important thing. Oh, Twitch. I'm on Twitch. I'm very bad at video games. So if you like to tell people how to play video games, I'm the channel for you. I sit there and get lost and whine about it. So please come tell me what to do and help me make it through the games. I'm not a gamer. It's twitch.tv/Yael Tygiel. Yep. And if you want to talk body positivity or SVU or send me cats, those are things I love. So any of those things are welcome on Twitter or Instagram.
Awesome.
SVU and the cats. It's just...
SVU cats.
It sounds like Taylor Swift.
Yep. Taylor Swift has nothing on me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you're interested in following the podcast, you can follow me pretty much everywhere at Kmaldo, or the show at Pop Culture Planet Podcast on Instagram. You can catch new episodes of the show every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. EST. And if you watch the live video version, like you are right now, of Pop Culture Planet on my channel, youtube.com/Kmaldo, you can join in on the conversation in real time and stick around at the end for a Q&A. We're going to do this one really quick because I know I've had you here forever, so we're just going to go through a few questions. That are not going to be in the audio podcast, so you got to check out the video for that. Episodes are available on all of your favorite podcast listening platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. And if you enjoy the episodes, consider subscribing so you know when a new one's posted. Rate and review this podcast and share it with your fellow pop culture lovers. Thanks for listening. It's been a blast, and talk to you next week. Okay, so we're going to go through just a few because I know I've kept you guys for like 2 hours. This is the longest episode yet, because Fandome, there was a lot to get through. We had a lot of thoughts. So I'll just bring up a couple. Madness Arcade says, imagine if Bubbles met Supergirl. That would be super dope. I would be here for that collaboration.
That would be pretty neat.
Let's see what we have here. I think we answered that one. Another one from Madness Arcade saying, I don't think old franchises should stay in the past. They should expand and introduce new interpretations to new audiences. So I guess that's kind of what we're saying, like, when there's like 100 Batman movies or 100 Spider-Man movies. Do you guys agree, or do you think it's like we keep a classic and just keep showing everyone the classic?
I would, creatively speaking, directors, writers, it's a very tough line to walk upon, because again, you want to have those fans that might know the IP from back in the day and love the character. But then there's a new generation of people that want to know these characters and fall in love with them like we did back in the day. And I think Star Wars, whether we like it or not, it had a hard time trying to appease both audiences from 40 years ago to what we are now. So I think it's just a matter of, I don't care what the IP is, a good story is a good story with great characters and something to say. So as long as you have that, whether it be nostalgia heavy or be brand new, just tell a good story. I think your IP will be successful.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, I think that, we have kind of a large collection of the classics already out there. So it kind of feels like, if you want to watch something classic, there's a wide range of, from comic books that you could read to, TV shows that you could watch or films that you could see. So I feel like we're covered there. I do feel like introducing new iterations just also helps kind of age the properties in a new way, and allows kind of like a younger generation to be able to kind of make it their own and see these old like IP characters in a new and fresh light. And it also helps for like their parents or their grandparents or, their siblings who have seen kind of the older bodies of work get a fresh take on it as well.
I think it's good to take something and do something different, right? So I know that there was, for example, a lot of hate for the Ghostbusters reboot with the ladies because they took something so beloved and people were like, you're ruining what I remember. And the truth is, it was different. It was something else. And so I'm not a huge fan of reboots or revivals, but I think that if you're going to do something different with it, then that's interesting. Or if you're going to expand on it, I think we don't need the same Spider-Man origin story 3 times. Mm-hmm. I think we understand. I think that's one of the things that Into the Spider-Verse did so well. They were like, the story. Mm-hmm. So I think if you could do something different with it, then keep doing the same character or introduce new ones and expand and give us, Suicide Squad's giving us these rando characters. Let's see where they go. They'll die, but let's see where they go.
They'll die.
Too funny. Ron says, just like Elliot said, all Dwayne Johnson has to do is promote the film. All he had to do to promote the film was drop a hot promo and call out the entire JL team. It was fantastic. So we just trust The Rock. We're like,
people's champ. People's champ.
Trust for your films. I mean, to be fair, that Jumanji reboot is a lot of fun. So
love it.
Okay, I trust you.
Yeah. Has he done a bad movie?
I don't know.
Baywatch. I didn't really like Baywatch.
Have you rewatched Baywatch? It's not terrible. They just didn't decide. Here's the issue. They didn't decide if they were like a parody or if they were doing a serious movie. And that was the issue, is they just needed to go, we are doing a movie about lifeguards who solve crime, or we're making fun of the fact that this is a show about lifeguards who solve crime. Right. One, you can't do both. Watch it again. It's not terrible. I've seen it like 3 times. It was on TV.
Yeah. But I think
both are wild.
No.
Yeah. I don't think he can make a bad movie. Even if it's not great, it's still like it's still good. Like,
I mean, look at the game plan. That movie's not for me. It wasn't bad. The Tooth Fairy, not bad.
Yeah. He's just got that.
Oh, are those like the little kid ones? Because I don't think I saw that one, but those are the ones for kids, right?
Tooth Fairy's the one where he's this hockey player. I remember the sport. And then he becomes the Tooth Fairy. And then the other one is where he's a football player. Wow, I'm really proud of myself for knowing these sports today. And then there's the little girl that's Peyton something is his daughter. Or Peyton's the character.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah. Okay.
With the cute hair.
Together.
Let's see. We got another comment from Menace Arcade that says Static Shock deserves more love. I heard things a few years ago about Jaden Smith playing Static in a web series. It's a shame that didn't happen. I mean, he could still do it. I've also heard, I think, is his name RJ Skyler? The guy from Power Rangers. I heard people were mentioning his name as a potential Static Shock for fan casting. I think that, or pick somebody brand new.
What's the kid's name from Stranger Things? Caleb.
Oh
Caleb,
yeah.
I think I saw an article where they had like fan casted Caleb.
Oh, okay.
As Static Shock.
The kid from This Is Us.
I don't know.
The youngest Randall.
Oh, okay.
Not teen Randall. He already hit puberty and his voice is too deep.
Oh, the little one?
Little one with the lisp.
Yeah, he's cute.
He'd be perfect.
And who knows when this film will come out? I mean, honestly.
Right. He's got time.
At that time, he might be, aged up a little bit.
Okay, we got another comment from Zach. Says, my wife and I are also big fans of Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. Birds of Prey is one of our 2020 favorites. She makes just waiting for an egg and cheese sandwich great. We also love the diversity in this film. So much fun.
Yes, that sandwich, the real MVP of the film.
Delicious.
I love the just like the cinematic visuals of those types of shots, where they're just like the egg sandwich flying,
Yeah. And shout out to the director, because I mean, being an Asian American woman directing this film, it was dope. I really wish more people would have seen it, but now that it's on HBO Max, I am hoping that a ton of people are tuning in.
It's honestly, I just finally got to see it, and it was amazing. It's clearly made by women. It's like the upskirt thing that I pointed out. There's like moments where you go, clearly a woman, when she ties her hair back. Oh, it's one of my biggest pet peeves when people are fighting and their hair is down. I go, it's going to get your mouth. It's going to block your vision. So she gives her a hair tie. And I was like, clearly written by a woman. Clearly. And it's just a minor detail that makes it, that elevates it, that makes it more believable, that makes it more realistic in this weird ass world. That movie's actually fantastic.
Well, we should get happy for The Flash, because that's Christina Hopkins wrote that Bumblebee, and she's writing the Flash film. So hopefully The Flash will have some of that true essence to Iris West's character and things like that. And and Kathy Yen, give Kathy Yen more opportunity. She's a great director.
Is she writing this movie though? Like, I feel like every time they announce something for The Flash, it changes. Like, honestly, no joke. But it's like the director, the writers. I feel like everything behind the film has changed so many times. So I hope she writes it, but I'm like, I'm kind of skeptical at this point because we've just been waiting for so long. But to Yael's point, also that is something else. Like when you can tell the difference of a woman in Wonder Woman 1, just their like love scene. I loved, because you literally saw nothing. Everything was understood. The way it was shot was beautiful. I was like, oh my gosh, finally more of this.
I mean, I even think of how the Amazonians were just dressed differently in Patty Jenkins' Themyscira versus Joss Whedon's Themyscira. They were completely, just different costumes in general. So, yeah.
Yes. I will say in Joss's, the scene where the doors are shutting and the women are holding it up and it's just shots of their abs. I was like, this is incredible. I'm so turned on right now. This is amazing.
Too funny. We got another comment from Zach about The Haunting of Hill House, saying it's a wonderfully scary but also deeply emotional experience. What are some of your favorite films or shows that are both scary and moving, that like reach the heart but also thrilling? And while we think about it, he also mentions how Rotten Tomatoes called The Haunting of Hill House Episode 6, The Two Storms, one of the best of 2018, like the best TV shows. But that's the one where they have like the moving camera shots.
Yeah, the steady cam.
Yeah.
The continuous shot,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
So can you put that question back up?
Yes.
It was scary and with heart.
Scary and moving. Oh.
I'm
trying to think of Lovecraft Country.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's terrifying, but the most terrifying parts are mostly the racism. But I mean, there are also some additionally, terrifying moments that happen as well. But it's just so well written. It's so well done. To Elliott's point earlier, shouting out Misha Green, who is she is a huge horror fan. And I just feel like we don't talk enough about having like Black women that just are obsessed with horror. And she loved it. And that's why she wanted to do this show. And we all know that H.P. Lovecraft is a raging racist, or he was rather, because, he's dead. But he was a raging racist, and kind of taking this property power, outside of like that whole racist works of literature, that he had, pulling back, taking that, centering a Black family of well-educated bibliophiles who are on this crazy sci-fi horrific journey. I love it. So, and who are, mostly combating racism and taking back what's theirs. I truly enjoy Lovecraft Country. So yeah, that's going to be my pick.
Yeah. I think one of mine is there was a new season, the first season of the new Twilight Zone. They did an episode called Replay. Did anybody see that one?
I didn't.
It was so
Is it scary?
It's like it's like where the racism is the scary thing. And like it's basically telling the story, like a Black Lives Matter type of story, but like there's a woman who has a tape recorder where she can rewind the situation that happened, and so she and her son are on their way to his college, so she's going to drop him off to his first year of college, and this cop is like continuing to chase them, and it's like so frustrating, and each time she has to like rewind to try to get out of the scenario, and no matter what she does, she cannot escape it. And it was just like, it was like scary, and also like, obviously very impactful. I think that was the best episode they've done in the entire like 2 seasons of the new Twilight Zone, because to be honest, it's like very hit or miss. But like that one like really stuck with me, and I was just like, I'm shook, and I'm terrified. Yeah, you should check it out. It's definitely, and they talk about like so many different things. Like it's just like so deep. They talk about like the power of like being able to like record your experience and like sharing it with the world, and kind of like just basically what people are dealing with now with like police brutality. And it was like very, but done in a Twilight Zone way, so it was very like eerie and a lot, but very interesting.
Nice. For me, I'll probably go with like the first 2 seasons of American Horror Story. I think those 2 seasons are one of my favorite, Asylum and The Haunted House. And then probably Penny Dreadful. I really enjoyed Penny Dreadful, and I thought they did a good job of the monster elements, but also, Eva Green, I think, is a fantastic actress. Josh Hartnett was great in that show, Timothy Dalton. So I'll go with those shows.
I watched the first season of American Horror Story.
You did?
I did. That was probably the last, that was the last scary show that I did. So like, but really to me, that one wasn't terrifying. Like it was a lot of layers. Like you're like, what is happening in this house? Honestly. So, but yeah, that was probably the last scary thing I watched before Lovecraft Country. So I watched that. Yay. I felt like I'm like, oh, I know what you're talking about. Finally. I did not watch Penny Dreadful.
I don't have anything to add to this. I really don't. I mean, I saw, I think 3 seasons of American Horror Story. And I don't do scary. I don't like to be scared. It's really jump scares. That's my issue. Yeah. I don't mind blood and gore. Like guts coming out of somebody, fine. I just don't like things jumping out of me. I freaked out at the first Saw movie. You know that he's in the closet. He flashes the camera. I still freaked out.
Too funny. Next one we have Geekly Goods, Leo saying Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers were awesome. Which turtle series is your favorite?
I don't know that
I'll probably do. Yeah, I would say I'll probably just stick with the movies because I've seen the movies so many times. I didn't really get into like the animated shows too much, and so the cartoons that are even on TV now. So it's probably just the movies for me for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the 90s.
Yeah, I watched all of them, the movies and the animated series in the 90s. I haven't watched the newest like iteration that they have. I did watch the newest film, but not like the newest animated series. But honestly, I've never thought about that. I haven't been able to choose. I just love them so much because they're so fun and fun-loving and ridiculous, and they are truly just kids, but they are also incredible. And so I just love everything about them. I love when they skateboard. I love that they love pizza, even though I don't love pizza. I just love them. They're just so adorable. Oh, they're mutants and they're turtles. I love them.
I'm going to go with the animated series from the 90s. Because I don't remember the movies, but I have I assume because of GIFs, that I have all these memories of the animated series.
Yeah. Okay, we got another one from Zach saying, you guys are awesome. Have any of you seen 1994's comic book film The Crow? If so, what are your thoughts? And shout out to Birds of Prey. I think we talked about Birds of Prey, right? We talked about Birds of Prey.
Yeah.
Yes. So did anybody see The Crow?
Yeah. Of course I have. Classic.
I think I did, but I don't remember it.
Crow's the Brandon Lee film, right?
Brandon Lee, super yeah.
I was like, we're talking about that, The Crow. Weren't they supposed to remake that recently?
Yeah, Jason Momoa was attached to it. I think Bradley Cooper was attached to it. That is like a production. That film's never going to get made. I mean, there's the curse, obviously, Brandon Lee dying on set. So that film is like cursed.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they should not remake it. It was like, I didn't see it when it came out. I saw it later as like a teen or an adult, and knowing the story behind it and his death and the curse and everything. And so I thought it was really great, a really great movie. And I think it should be left alone. There are a lot of movies that I think should be left alone. Yeah. I think that's one of them. I think The Princess Bride should be left alone. I think The Craft should be left alone. I think there are these movies that should be left alone.
Back to the Future. Don't touch it.
Yeah. Back to the Future for sure. And The Craft for sure. Oh my gosh.
And I think they're working on something for The Craft, right?
They already are. Yeah, got the cast and everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
But here we are.
Okay. We got 2 more questions, and then I will let you guys go. Zach says, we'll start following you guys on social media. Embarrassed to say I didn't know your channels, but I'm grateful that I now do. Thank you for these in-depth progressive conversations. Yay.
Wait, your audience is so positive.
They are.
Nice.
I know.
It's not YouTube.
This is a happy place.
YouTube I'm used to.
Oh my God.
And for the last question, we have Bugatti, who says, I'm an upcoming writer. Do you have any advice?
I have lots of advice. I'm full of advice. All right. First of all, you are not an upcoming writer. You're a writer. Just write. That's number 1. Number 2 is I just saw this really amazing thing on Twitter from writers saying that write what you are passionate about, write what you care about. Don't write what you think other people want to read, because it seems to be, this is from a writer, not from me. It seems to be that when they sold things, it was because it was something that they cared about and were passionate about, and not because they were writing what they thought people wanted. So let your passion and your voice come through, and that will be helpful. I would also say, depending on what type of writing you want to do, learn what that format is. Learn what needs to be done in that way. If you're writing TV, read scripts. Get used to that. Watch your favorite thing and notice what they're doing that's different than things that you might not like or might not watch. If you're a journalist, please learn journalism. I don't generally refer to myself as a journalist because I do not do real news. So I would say learn journalism if you're going to do that. If you're a blogger, then blog. Just put your work out there. Keep putting it out there. Meet other people. Take feedback. Take classes. Yep, those are my advice.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
I love giving advice.
I would say also have fun, because I think that will definitely shine through in whatever type of work that you're doing, whether it be TV, whether it be film, whether it be, entertainment articles, even if you're just doing a film review or a TV recap. Like, definitely have fun, and always lean into your tone and your voice, and also lean into your life experiences. So I feel like a lot of times, in this industry in particular, people feel like they need to have a certain amount of years within this specific industry. But I think it's also useful in your writing writing if you can bring other experiences from other places. I like to tell people, y'all, I've lived 1,000 lives. Truly. I mean, if you truly knew my entire life, you would be like, oh, wow, I did not even realize, including the fact that I used to do biomedical research. So, like, honestly, anything is possible. You take those experiences, you add them, it adds certain layers, and it adds character, and it builds character, and it makes for compelling characters if you're writing TV and film. So,
yeah. And I think just this piece of advice for just anything anyone wants to do is just like start doing it, you know, like, you know, if you want to make videos, if you want to write, if you want to, you know, whatever it is, just like start doing it. Because I know it's so easy to be like, oh, I don't have this thing that I need to do this thing. And it's like, that's how everyone starts. You just got to put yourself out there.
I would say do without, and then when you get the thing that you need, add it in. But start, just start. There's nothing stopping you.
Yep. And I'm not a writer myself, but just from a slice of life, surround yourself with good people, like-minded people as well. And again, don't be afraid to ask questions and to put yourself out there and just believe in yourself. So, yeah.
There's also like a ton of writers on Twitter that are giving out free advice. I know that Gloria Calderon-Collette, right?
Yes.
From One Day at a Time, literally will do like Twitter threads with information and facts and help and advice. Does Q&As, I think, on Instagram. So does Sarah Gamble. I know that there are tons more. Follow writers that you like. They will literally tweet out advice. They will go, here is fact you should know. You're welcome.
And there's Zach Stentz as well is another writer who he's written a lot of stuff for TV and film. He used to write on the Flash TV show. He does like a lot of different genre stuff. He actually tweets out a lot of really, really good advice and threads about his experiences too. So
awesome. And on that note, I will end the broadcast because I've kept you guys for 2.5 hours. So thank you for your time.
The record. Hey, your guests are going to have to beat that. So see if they can do that.
I don't know. I don't know if we can do it. This was such a great conversation. I really, really appreciate you guys coming on. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
thanks.